OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, you're very welcome along. It's Thursday morning. It is the 22nd of June. It's 7:30. You're very welcome along to Off the Ball AM. We are here all the way through until 10. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us on 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can always get us on youtube.com/Off the Ball. I'm getting dagger eyes there from Colin. Whoa, it's like a bomb went off. Colin, good morning to you, but you're not actually here, so no one can hear you. He's waving through the glass. Shane, how are you?
How are things? Good morning.
Kathleen's here as well. Kathleen, how are you?
Morning. I'm good. So
officially the nerves. I'm going to let you be nervous from this point forward, Kathleen.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind.
It was too early. You were like a kid 6 weeks out from Christmas, getting very excited about what Santa was bringing. But Santa's officially starting the visit tonight with Ireland against Zambia. This is properly the kickoff of the World Cup.
Yeah, it is. Well, for me, it probably felt like I started with the announcement of that first provisional squad, but tonight is the first time we get to see the players on the pitch. We get to see, what Vera is going for. She said yesterday in her press conference that today is kind of for the players who maybe haven't had a lot of minutes, or the players who are looking to prove something. It's not necessarily for your Katie McCabe's, who, she's probably not playing tonight anyways, according to Vera yesterday, because she only came into the squad on Monday. But tonight is a night for your Leanne Kiernans and stuff to prove what they can do. There was a little 11v11 open training session last Friday that we were able to attend.
Was there 1,500 people at it?
Yeah.
That was the one in UCD?
Yeah,
so that was a fairly amazing thing that I saw a photograph of it. I was like, that's people got tickets who were, I don't know what the allocation was, but it was taken up immediately.
Yeah, I think it was mainly to just by looking at the crowd, it was quite young, so it was mainly to clubs and schools that the tickets were gone to. But fair play to the FAI, they actually did put on a really good show. There was a DJ there. They had the little activity book that they've put out around the World Cup. They were handing those out. They had little autograph books for all the kids that were there, so that after the match and after the training session, the kids lined up around the pitch and the team went around the entire pitch and signed as many things as they could.
We didn't speak about the activity book, but it's an incredible initiative where it's encouraging kids to go to their local libraries and pick up a free World Cup activity book, which has fact files and colouring, and as far as I know it's in every library. Certainly if you ring your local library, there's a chance to go down and pick them up, and they're free. And it's one of those initiatives that's promoting sport and reading, and you're like, oh, this is a very good idea.
Yeah, and I think there's a digital version of it as well, because I was doing a podcast with an Australian podcast yesterday who wanted to see, what are Ireland thinking about
secrets?
us.
You didn't give any secrets?
No. All the state secrets remained. It's actually I did another one this morning, so the Australians are very keen to hear what we were thinking at the moment.
We want to keep the ball kicked out to you at all.
But the podcast... You
can use your hands, can't you?
The podcast recording was delayed by 5 minutes because one of them was really enjoying the crossword and the word search. That's in the activity book. So, it's not just for kids.
The sticker book's out as well, isn't it? The official...
Yeah,
or is there an official World Cup sticker
book? If anyone has found one of these, can they please tell me where they found them? Because I have searched high and low across Dublin and I cannot find them. And I've asked my parents and family in various parts of the country if they see one to pick one up. But they're like gold dust.
That's the best part of the World Cup.
I know. I want to start collecting my stickers and getting excited. Although, I suppose it's a bit weird being out so early because a lot of the squads aren't really set yet, so it'll be interesting who is there for the Irish ones. But yeah, sorry, what I was saying was that at the 11v11 last week, Leanne Kiernan was the only person to score, so I would be very intrigued to see how Vera plays her tonight, because she definitely is one of those players that needs game time and needs the opportunity to prove herself a little bit.
When you say someone needs game time, there's two aspects to that. Somebody needs game time to be in contention for minutes in the World Cup, and then there are some who need game time to prove that they're worthy of their place on the plane. So how big is the squad at the moment? How many people are going to miss out?
So the squad's 31 at the moment, but that's not including the 4 US based players, so they come in I think next Thursday, and then it has to be brought down to 23.
Okay, so 35 down to 23. 12 people are going to be very disappointed.
That's a tough conversation, isn't it? I mean, naturally enough, but how do you even engage that conversation? I suppose from Vera's perspective, she's had these discussions before. Like it's never an easy job for a manager. That's I suppose what she gets paid for. But there's a lot of disappointed players there.
Yeah, it was interesting. She was saying when she announced the provisional squad that she made over 50 phone calls in one day telling people that they either had made it or they hadn't made it, because there are quite a few people there on the wings who maybe thought might get a chance with the provisional squad, and that there was one point where she just had to take a break in the middle of it and just put the phone down and walk away. And she said, like, her husband or someone asked her, was she all right? And she was like, I actually can't talk to anyone else. It was quite emotionally taxing. But I think we have a clip as well of her talking about, say, next week when she has to tell the players, and how it's tough for her, but it's going to be a lot worse for any of the players who don't get on the plane.
Yeah, Jesus, that's...
Roll it there, Roisin.
Email not, text message not. The first group I had to call, unfortunately, because physically I couldn't go there. But of course, this will be face to face. Yeah, there's been written a lot about that because I've said something about that, and it is something that I'm really nervous about. I think that's all that I should say about it, because it's for them so much worse than for me. And the fact that this is coming up, that gives me sleepless nights. Yeah, it is. But that was also in other tournaments. I know that I'm going to break dreams, so that is not a nice feeling.
You wouldn't want to be in her shoes next week, you have to say.
At the same time, right, we do seem to have quite a bit of doubt about a few positions at least, so there's a lot up for grabs this week, and that's why these games really matter to those people who need the minutes, right? Somebody is going to put in a good performance and somebody's going to have a mistake or just not be at it, and that'll be the last thing in her mind when she's sitting down and going, you're in, you're out.
Yeah, she was asked about that yesterday as well, and she was saying because they actually have so much time together as a squad, like obviously tonight is important because it's like competitive minutes and you're not playing against each other, that she's seen a lot from certain players in training that maybe she didn't expect, or not, she was like, I didn't expect is the wrong word, but that she was surprised at how much players were putting into everything. There just seems to be like a generally good atmosphere around the squad at the moment. Chloe Mustaki was asked, you know, is there a bit of tension between everyone because obviously you're all vying for the same positions, and she was like, to be honest, no, we're such a tight-knit group, like we've all been friends and been through so many things together for so long that you just know that next week you're either gonna have to like take a moment to celebrate the people around you, or else take a moment to make sure they're lifted up if they don't get in. But yeah, like you were saying, I think most people aren't that, like, I think there not that many people are that confused about the starting 11. It's kind of past that where things go, so that's why tonight will be interesting in terms of positions, who gets on the pitch, who doesn't get on the pitch, and what that means for the announcement next week. So it's kind of the last time we get to see them on the pitch. I don't think there's any open training sessions or anything next week ahead of the announcement on Thursday.
And then the France game is, when's the France game?
It's the 6th. Yeah, it's this following week.
And that will be our first team?
Most likely.
For
I
at
would
least
think
a portion
so.
of it?
Yeah, at least for a portion of it anyways. It's a big send-off. Like obviously you don't want to run anyone ragged or risk any mad injuries at that stage, but I reckon it'll be as close to the first team as possible.
Yeah, that's the balancing act. You've got to get minutes into them at as high intensity as possible in the kind of the rhythm, so that they have their touch is not like the men's team's touch for the first for the game. Like it'll definitely be important for, say, the championship players who've been off for I think 8 weeks, maybe more, 10 weeks now, whereas the likes like Katie only just finished up, Denise and the American players are still playing at the moment, so they'll be fairly match fit, so definitely for that side it'll be really important.
The choice of Zambia, that's pointedly like Nigeria. This is the same attacking style of play. It seems to be very much let's get ready for that game.
Yeah, I think so. Like Vera has said all the way along that she chooses her opponents for very specific reasons. Zambia also beat Nigeria last year in AFCON, and Nigeria are like absolute, it's like one of 3 I think that they haven't actually won over the years. I think they're 9-time champions or something, so they know what they're doing against Nigeria. It's hard with these teams because there's actually so little video or so few of the games that are accessible to watch to properly assess the teams. Like we did an episode of Quigig where we reviewed all the opponents in the group, and I was on Nigeria, and apart from a few international windows where they played the likes of the States and New Zealand, where, you know, those federations took it upon themselves to release highlight clips, there was very little about them. But it was interesting. Vera said yesterday that Tom Elms in particular, who also worked with the under-16s, he's been concentrated fully on the senior squad the last while. He took the responsibility of like gathering footage and gathering all the information about Nigeria and Zambia so that the team would be properly prepared. So hopefully they have seen a lot more than I have of this squad, but definitely I think tonight isn't so much about our opponents or what it prepares us for the World Cup. I really do think it's about the individual players and getting those minutes, whether it's that they haven't had a lot of them or that they need to prove themselves. Yeah,
Chloe Mustaki obviously was doing press yesterday. What was the general tenor from that?
She was quite optimistic. She said she was feeling good, that she'd had, you know, a really good season in terms of Bristol making it up into the WSL, and the fact she got a new contract, so she's going to be playing in the WSL next year. And I actually asked her a question about whether there was any extra added tension or pressure on tonight, because when you think about it, this is it's a friendly against Zambia, and on a routine day it doesn't mean all that much, but it's possibly one of the most important games, and definitely the most important one we've played since maybe the playoffs for a lot of players in this team, because as you said earlier, Ger, it's your final chance. So I think we have some video of her answering that question.
And Chloe, like obviously tomorrow's technically a friendly, but in some ways there's more riding on it for individual players than many other games that we've played before. How are you approaching that, I suppose, like mentally in terms of your prep and making sure that you're in the right place to show to Vera and the rest of the team that you really want to spot in that play? Yeah, probably no different, to be honest. Like, I'm lucky in the sense that I'm playing full time, so I'm kind of used to approaching every game the same way. So yeah, just preparing well, knowing the game plan and doing the best that I can on the night, and hopefully that's enough. Yeah, I mean, obviously there'll be a few changes to the core team, and we're still only kind of in week 2, so we will be a lot more prepared for Australia in a way in terms of our connectivity on the pitch than we will be maybe tomorrow with a few different changes. But that's just the way it is, and that's the process you need to go through to make sure that you know your best 11 for our game against Australia.
Is she going to be first choice when the team is named for the first game of the World Cup?
She's one of the players for me that's still slightly on the edge. I think she'll be on the plane, but I don't know if she'll be in a starting position at the World Cup.
You can't put her out for a press conference like that and sit beside the manager and then not put her on the plane, right? Like, if I was in her shoes, I'd be like, oh, I'm on the plane.
Well, you would think that, but also, so the way they have this set up is that we basically get access to nearly every single player.
But not beside the manager.
Well,
at a press conference, the manager's talking about breaking hearts. Yeah, not yours. I mean,
well, no, I know, but also say like they've had someone like Abby Larkin did like when the World Cup trophy was here and stood beside Vera and chatted to Vera about whether she would have her place on the plane and stuff. There has been quite a lot of these sort of events, and I know it's a week out, so maybe that changes things a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if she'd be a starting player, but she probably would be on the plane for me.
Has she got better since going full time?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely, just even in terms of like agility and her strength on the pitch, you know, she has had an incredibly tough couple of years, and I'm sure most people know her story, but she gave up a full-time job 12 months ago, a decent job, you know. I think she halved her salary to go full-time with Bristol, who were playing in the championship at the time. they managed to get promoted to the WSL this season. She signed a new contract, and I don't think she would have signed a new contract and gone up to the WSL if this had happened a year ago.
Yeah.
I think it's a testament to how hard she has worked, and she even said it yesterday. It was in that clip there, that, you know, for her, she can even feel the difference in her game, the fact that she is playing consistently at a higher level than she ever was before, and it was one of the best decisions that she made. So yeah, I think when you look at the Chloe Mustaki of a year ago and the one that's out on the pitch now, there's a definite difference, and there's even just a confidence in the way she plays that I don't know was there before, possibly because she was on and off the pitch so much.
How did Bristol use her?
I used her either on the wing or in centre half, so kind of a mixture. She hasn't really settled on like one particular position in that squad. She's kind of been moved around a little bit because they had quite a few injuries this season.
And where would Vera prefer to use her?
Hard to know. She generally plays a bit higher up the pitch whenever it's with Vera, so I imagine.
You wonder, does that stand to a player being that versatile? Sometimes it can go the other direction, do you know, and Vera's making a decision as to who's in the squad. Obviously it's useful, and you could be a utility player if you play in different positions, but also maybe sometimes it's better to be a specialist.
Yeah, I think with the way that Ireland squad is set up, we generally need players that can do a couple of different things. We don't have players who play at a high enough level by and large. Like, obviously you have your Canadians, your Denises, your goalkeepers who have to play at a certain position, but I think for the rest of the team it's quite important that you're versatile. You look at someone like Megan Connolly, you know, she can play midfield, she can play on the wing, she can play in a back four. There's lots of different positions that we've required of players like her over the last few years, so I don't think the versatility thing will be too much of a worry for Vera.
Okay, we're going to come back to this in 15 minutes. One last clip from Chloe Mustaki here talking about her old job and going pro.
Yeah, it's been a pretty intense 12 months. 12 months ago, I walked away from a full-time job, so a lot has happened. So for me, personally, whatever happens in the next week or so, like, I can just be happy and proud with what I've achieved in the past 12 months. But it's been fantastic, and having gone through a bit of a difficult time this season, I'm glad to just be involved at the moment. I'll fight for my place to the last day, of course, but I need to remember the bigger picture, and I was out for quite a while. But no, it's been fantastic, and as I said, I was working a full-time job up until this time last year, so it's been an amazing whirlwind 12 months, and that night in Hampden Park, I'll never forget that. So without a shadow of a doubt, the togetherness, yeah, I don't know, it's in our DNA, I think, and the support that we have for each other is unwavering no matter what. We have such a big age gap between kind of the younger girls and the older girls, and you wouldn't even be able to tell. Like, everyone's lovely to each other, everyone's supporting each other on the pitch as well. The communication has grown a lot over the past kind of 12 months or 18 months as well. So yeah, it's great to see, and yeah, well, hopefully girls will be able to look past being disappointed potentially next week. But yeah, probably the togetherness.
I know you said that people will be familiar with the story. Lots of people won't be familiar. When she was 19, she had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she's now, in the last 2 weeks, I think, tweeted that she's an ambassador for breakthrough cancer research. So it's one of those incredible stories where somebody comes back from a really terrifying condition and later represents Ireland, and has also come back from ACLs.
Yeah, it's interesting when she talks about the ACLs, because she says that was almost worse than the cancer, because there was like a acceptance when she had the cancer that there was very specific things she had to do, and she probably felt worse then, whereas there was a frustration that came with the ACLs and a much tougher mental battle. So yeah, and I suppose as well, when you've been hit down once and then you get hit down again, the second time is always a lot worse. But I mean, in that time she became a pundit for RTE. You know, she got this great job. She really is one of those characters on the Irish team who's showed incredible mental strength to get to this place.
Yeah, a high achiever. Yeah,
there's some good podcasts with her. I think, was it Nathan or Joe did a really good chat with her when she was making her return on the Off the Ball feed.
The show is live this evening from Tala. You're heading out?
Yep, me and Nathan are going to be out there, so we are doing the news round, I think, with Richie later, and then we will be providing live updates throughout the evening, and then also of course there'll be loads of content this evening and tomorrow morning on the podcast feeds and on social media with chats with players and post-match reaction. And
7 a.m. tomorrow morning for the latest episode of Koi Gig?
Yeah, well, it's being recorded at 7 a.m. tomorrow, so it'll probably hit your feeds about an hour or two later depending on how fast our producer Kathleen is, but I'll also be back in here so you guys can chat to me as well.
It's 7:50. OTB AM is live with Gillette Labs. Got the Ultimate Shaver, your money back Neon Night Edition is available now. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Sue Ronan's going to join us at 8. Patrick Horgan is going to talk to us at 8:20. John Duggan at 8:40. We've got James Tracy with You Had to Be There at 8:55, and then we'll play a half an hour of a pretty exceptional interview with Vincent Hogan, who has stepped away from the Irish Independent as their chief sports writer after an illustrious career. He was in studio yesterday speaking with Joe Malloy. The whole thing is about an hour and 20 minutes, and you can get that in your OTB Daily feed. It's also in the OTB GAA feed. If you're only a subscriber to one or the other, then really you should sort yourself out and subscribe to both of them. Some of the things we need to talk about: the Republic of Ireland centre backs at the moment, it looks like, are likely to be on the move.
Yeah, I think it's important that they get a bit of game time, and like you look at the centre halves we used to have, Premier League starting centre halves, the likes of Richard Dunn. Like you need to be playing week in, week out. Nathan Collins is one, I guess, who's at least got a little bit of game time. But yeah, to see a couple of players that are potentially on the move is.
So what's the
positive
story?
Well, it's Darragh O'Shea, isn't it? That appears to be heading off. I guess the West Brom version of Ger Shane, you were like, well, at least a little bit of game time. You want to see players at least playing in the Championship as well.
He was a regular. He was captain on and off over the course of the season.
Yeah, but then you look at some players like Jason Knight who are playing League One football and they should probably be playing in the Championship. But Darragh heading to Burnley, Vincent Kompany, I mean, not a bad centre half to learn from.
I think it's great. So he has Premier League experience, played 28 times for West Brom before they came down, and talking with Phil and Stephen in the office yesterday, they were both making the point that he was exceptional in big games, and he's going to start his career at Burnley with a big game because they got Manchester City on the first day of the season.
Not bad. Yeah,
and if Kompany is making you one of his first signings as they're coming up, then that would indicate that he'll play. And they did play with a flat back four last year. We could do with players playing in flat back fours as opposed to in threes. And the other thing that's happening is Nathan Collins has been the subject of two bids, which have so far both been rejected by Brentford. The bids are by Brentford. They've been rejected obviously by Wolves.
Yeah.
But Wolves are in desperate, dire financial straits, and Lopetegui clearly has not wanted him as one of his first choice defenders. Now, he did play the last two games of the season, but I think that was just like, give me a bit of game time here, we're safe, and they were checking what they've got. They'd be getting their money back a year on after what they paid for him, and maybe making a profit of $1 million or $1.5 million was the second bid. So hopefully Thomas Frank is wedded to him and is desperate for him and is going to stay there. It looks like he probably will. There's no other massive jobs available at the moment. And I think that'll be a great move for him. Like, they're a footballing side who, despite being overmatched, like to play front foot football. That's kind of what we need from Ireland players.
Yeah, and Collins is good on the ball. I think he's proved himself at Premier League level, hasn't he, Nathan Collins? Like he
got dropped.
Yeah, he had a difficult second half of the season.
Yeah, but that's like, so this is a hairy moment.
Yeah, but like the fact that even Brentford are showing interest, I think will do wonders for his confidence. Like, and a manager like Thomas Frank, if someone's coming in with bids like that, I mean, you'd hope that he gets that move, and hopefully from an Irish perspective he gets it. But like, he's still in a prime age, like Nathan Collins. He's literally at that age now where he wants to be playing Premier League week in, week out.
Yeah, he's only 22. Like, this is the first tiny setback that there's been in his career. Like, I think if everything had progressed the way we thought it was going to be, he'd be being spoken about as a potential. He'd be being bought by Wolves, by teams who are better placed than Wolves, and actually, in a way, that's what's happening here. Like, Brentford are still unfashionable but incredibly well run, and I don't know, maybe they can have a similar season next season to this season. And if they do,
9th or something, was it this year?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if we have more Irish players at those mid-table Premier League teams pushing for Europe, I know it's a lot to ask for at the moment, but Nathan Collins is certainly one of those you'd think when you look at the Irish team sheet that will be getting that game time. And to see Darragh O'Shea getting that move as well, by the way, like that's amazing. You kind of see some players who get stuck in the championship doldrums and maybe end up as a championship player for their entire careers, but if he's getting an opportunity to come back into the Premier League and hopefully get some game time as well. I know maybe Vincent Company is probably thinking we just need to bolster up the squad, have some options in the centre of defence as well, but if Darragh can burst his way into that Burnley team and get regular game time next season, can only be a good thing from our perspective.
It's also the thing of like you can't get on the pitch unless you're in the team as well, so like even the fact that he has the opportunity to go there, learn from Company, show him what he can do, you know, there's a lot more chances to start some Premier League games than there is if he stays with West Brom.
He also seems like a tough taskmaster. Like Company takes no prisoners. You see that clip of him in the dressing room laying into players. It was one of the documentaries, wasn't it?
Was it Burnley that went back to training like super early? They had like already some of their pre-season was already done. I think it was Burnley, and I was like, Christ.
Yeah,
you give them a couple of weeks.
Give the lads a bit of a break, Jesus. So yeah, it's definitely positive from an Irish perspective, and even heading into those internationals later in the year, the more players we have playing football. I know that'll be early in the season, but still. Yeah,
I did think Nathan Collins talking about Lopetegui last week was quite interesting in that you probably, maybe bitter is the wrong word, but you maybe expected him to have a bit of anger, a bit of frustration at the fact that he didn't get as much game time this season as he possibly wanted, but he was actually very reflective on the whole thing and said that on the outside, like, yeah, okay, it was tough at times, but he learned a lot, and it's not there's no animosity between him and Lopetegui, because despite him not playing him, he was actually helping him in a lot of other ways in terms of training sessions or, you know, conversations off the pitch. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Those bids as well. So the first bid apparently that Brentford made for Nathan Collins was £20.5 million. That matched exactly, as you said, Ger, what Wolves paid Burnley for him a year ago, and then the second bid went up £1.5 million to 22 million quid. Again, rejected. Wolves have these financial fair play regulations as well that they have to sell players. Ruben Neves is already gone to Saudi Arabia for a reported £47 million. Yeah, close to 50. So like they're probably going to have to sell him. I don't know how many more bids Brentford and Thomas Frank are ready to table, but you would hope from an Irish perspective that the next one is the one that gets through. Yeah, and that this isn't a saga, and that it doesn't take all pre-season, and that he's not left in limbo a little bit, and you know, because that could easily happen here. So very quickly, just going to run you through the front pages of the papers. It's all Vera Pauw, and the back pages on the front pages of the sports sections. Running the rule: last chance for fringe players to book World Cup flight. Tommy Martin is asking if Liam Brady has fallen out of love. Is football truly gone? It was one of those things that Brady was on the radio after he announced his retirement for a short interview, and he just said I've fallen out of love with the game. I was like, that's pretty depressing, really, isn't it? McKay benched as Pauw gets ready for the final reckoning. The drop quote here is, let me be clear, I'm very happy in Ireland, everybody can see that, I want to stay. So contract negotiations have officially been paused. Is that the line? Yeah, that seemed to be what Vera was saying yesterday, that she was fully concentrated on the World Cup for now, and that she didn't want anything to take focus away from that. Stand up for the girls in green is the back page of the Sun. Ireland versus Zambia 7:30 tonight, and call back again. B's 22 million Nathan bid is rejected. So that was the story we were just talking about. And the Daily Mail have changed their line from yesterday when it looked like there was a debate about whether or not Stephen Kenny would be in charge for September, but today they're certain that he will be in charge for September. FAI hold fire, Kenny poised to get green light for September, which I think was always fairly obvious. No one's going to change the manager in advance of the games against France and Holland. It wouldn't make any sense. Like, even in a badly run organisation, which the FAI no longer is, it wouldn't make sense to get rid of a manager and put somebody new in to get the team spanked twice with, anyway, never made any sense. Mounting costs, United talking tough after €58 million bid for Mason is dismissed. Man United on the phone just to add an extra 10 million. Literally, like, saga. It's going to be another saga, isn't it? That's going to drag on a bit. It sounds like personal terms have been agreed. Mason Mount does want to leave, so yeah, you'd expect that one to go through in the next week or so, but it's football and it's a Manchester Shed and it's transfers, so anything can happen. I think it all got swept under the carpet. This is Carl Dennehy's story here with Olympian Jack Woolley on the attack that left him needing plastic surgery. I don't know if you all remember, but Jack Woolley was on a night out, and I think was walking across one of the bridges in town.
when he got kicked in the face, and he posted horrific pictures of it. It was a random attack, and he's making the point here in an interview with Cathal Dennehy in the Irish Independent today that nothing came of it. He never heard back. There were no prosecutions on it, and it's pretty. It's not, it's pretty scary. It's not great that nothing has come of it. It's not great that it just completely disappeared. He's focused on qualifying for the Olympics in Paris, and apparently it's much harder to qualify now than it would have been previously. The top 6 in the world rankings earn an automatic place. He is currently 6th, but 5, 6, 7, 8 are all really tight, so we wish him all the best with that. I just want to take a moment. So Anya aims to top the class. This is the front of the Tee to Green section in the Irish Independent, and it's Anya Donegan, who is from Clare, plays out of Lahinch but also plays out of LSU, is the second Irish golfer who's qualified for the US Open after Leona Maguire. So the two of them are going to be playing in the US Open in a couple of weeks' time. She's back in Ireland. She's an amateur obviously at the moment, playing in college, and her family are very, very proud because she's my cousin's daughter, and it's an incredible story.
Nice. Family links.
Also played football underage for Ireland. Could potentially have been playing in the World Cup squad if she hadn't decided to go off and become one of the world's best young golfers.
One of these annoying people that's just good at everything.
Tough life.
Yeah.
Making these hard decisions.
LSU, by all accounts, is like one of the best places in the world to go to college. So
is it Baton Rouge or is it Louisiana? I know Baton Rouge is in Louisiana, but it's not in New Orleans.
Louisiana is the L for LSU, so I don't know.
I'll find out. Baton Rouge springs to mind.
It is in Baton Rouge.
Only way up is for O'Shea. Ireland defender poised for move to Burnley, and Pow is facing a dilemma. That's about who she's going to drop, and then pretty much Ilkay Gundogan is the other big story coming from the English papers. Off to Barcelona for 2 years with an option of a third.
What a time to leave your club.
Surely Man City need him, unless now this means that Declan Rice is back on their agenda. That was the thing that the Arsenal fans were a little bit concerned about. That deal isn't done yet. Arsenal could have swept in, paid the price, and now it looks like maybe City are going to come. I don't know, maybe they don't want him. Arsenal sealed $67.5 million deal for Havertz. Kovacic to leave Chelsea for City and $30 million move. So that's calling in my ear as well, going, Kovacic, they don't need Declan Rice, but they're different players.
Kai Havertz to Arsenal, Kathleen, a fan of that?
I'm not sure. It's so funny seeing transfers like that. Like, I remember working on his transfer when he first came to the Premier League. I think if Arteta thinks that he can get something out of him that previous Chelsea managers haven't managed to, then I think it could be really interesting.
The XG is not good.
No, it's not. It's terrible. And that's the thing that kind of scares me. I'm like, is this a lot of money to be putting out on a player who hasn't really proven himself in the Premier League? Especially when Arteta has been relatively smart, I think, so far with a lot of the transfers.
Well, for that reason, I guess you kind of have to trust him, don't you?
Well, see, that's the thing. And I know, like, Havertz has had his issues with various managers and stuff, and the way he has been played, and that he hasn't really ever felt like he's meshed with that Chelsea team, which is kind of understandable considering how much toing and froing there has been since he joined. So maybe Arteta thinks he can develop him and he can get that XG up. I'm sceptical at the moment of it, and I just don't want it to be another situation where we're paying like 70-80 million for someone who doesn't return anything.
All right, 2 minutes past 8 this morning. We're live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. After the break, former Republic of Ireland manager Sue Ronan will preview tonight's game against Zambia for us. During the break, you're going to hear a clip from episode 4 of the F1 pod, where Shane was joined by Bernie Collins, former head of race strategy for the Aston Martin Formula 1 team, and ex-Formula 1 driver and 5-time Grand Prix winner John Watson, talking about the gap between Red Bull and the rest. Back after these.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
3, 2, 1, go.
Whether you're a Drive to Survive fan or Grand Prix expert, now you can stay up to date with the world of F1. The F1 pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza, the ultimate podcast for F1 fans. The F1 pod will keep you on the edge of your seat. For the best insight and analysis, subscribe to the Off the Ball daily podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. The F1 pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza. Formula 1? Yeah, we go to town on it.
Is it perhaps premature, Bernie, for us to kind of start talking about the gap between Red Bull and the rest narrowing? Because, I mean, we spoke about the upgrades for Mercedes and for Ferrari and Aston Martin in recent weeks and months, but as you say, like that gap between Verstappen and Fernando Alonso at the end in Canada is only, and I say only, 9.5 seconds. You know, it's not exactly the 30 odd seconds he had in Spain in the previous race. So, like, in some ways the gap is narrowing, but it's hard to see that continuing long term, is it?
I think the gap is narrowing. I think it will continue to. So, you know, in F1 we talk a lot about marginal gains. So if you have the slowest car in the field, the gains that you can make through a floor, a front wing, aerodynamics are much greater than the car that is the fastest on the grid. So Red Bull, the gains that they can make now with a car that looks pretty planted, very solid, really good car, are going to be smaller than the teams further back, just naturally through physics. So I think we're going to continue to see that gap close and close. You know, the Mercedes team have been proven to be very, very strong in the past, multiple World Championship winners. They will be trying to push very hard. There's the wind tunnel time, you know, the regulation changes with that, the Red Bull penalty. I think everything is driving towards that gap closing. And the longer it goes on towards the end of this year, into next year with continuous regulations, that will close. I think naturally it will. I think we can't get too excited about the 9 seconds that we've seen versus the 30 we'd seen before. I don't think that's the rate of closure. I don't think that this week or, you know, in Austria, they're going to be dead tight. But that is the direction we're going. So we do need to be, I'm pretty optimistic that the other teams will get there.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
You can subscribe to the Formula One pod in our OTB daily feed. It is 8:05 this morning here on OTB AM. I'm delighted to say Sue Ronan, former Republic of Ireland manager, is with us to help us preview the game against Zambia tonight. But I guess, Sue, really, it's not just about the game tonight. This is officially the start of the World Cup for us.
Hi guys, absolutely it is. It seemed to be miles away the last time we spoke, but it's come around now pretty quick, and it's right on top of us. Yeah, it's the start. It really is the start of the World Cup for us. We're playing an unknown opponent, really, I guess, in Zambia. It's also their first time qualifying for the World Cup. They're known as the Copper Queens. They're not the best team in Africa, but they're certainly one of the up and coming teams. And I know from speaking to people there, they do have high hopes for this team, you know, going on and improving over the coming years. But, you know, we're obviously playing them because they will be similar style to who we're going to face, who are Nigeria, who are the top team in Africa. They'll be a similar style. The African teams all tend to play the same. They're all fit, very fit, strong girls. Fast on the break, physical, they be in your face, you know. So I guess that's one of the main reasons we're playing the game tonight, to try and set us up to what we're going to face against Nigeria in Australia. And yet at the same time, we've been talking a little bit about this earlier on the show, it won't really be our full team tonight. So if the result doesn't go our way, I don't think anybody should be too concerned about that just yet. No, they shouldn't. And I mean, I think Vera was quite clear last night in what she said. You know, she has a squad of 31 players. She needs to get it down to 23. And she wants to be fair to some of those players who, you know, she needs to see in a match situation. You can look at players all you like in training, but you need to see them in a game. You know, like some players will do great in training and they don't transfer that then when you cross the white line into a match scenario. And then some players are the opposite. They may not train too well and play really, really well in the night. But you know, she had said she's going to look at players. There's a lot of players there now that I suppose it's touch and go whether they're going to make it or not. She needs to look at those who maybe haven't got too many minutes in the past but have been in the squads. And she also probably needs to look at some of those that are coming back from injury to see where they're at. You know, what sort of a load she can give them at this moment in time, what their recovery is going to be like. So it's a big night for a lot of players. And look, while the result is not as important tonight, of course you want to build a bit of momentum. You want to go into the World Cup with some wins under your belt. And regardless of who we put out tonight, I'll be honest, I don't see us not winning the game. You know, I think we're a really good team now. We're sort of well-oiled machine, as they say. Excuse me. I'd expect the players that come in will know exactly what they have to do within the team. It's not about them per se, even though it is in terms of getting selected. But, you know, they're going to play for the team. They're going to know what their role is. And I think we should be too strong for Zambia.
Leanne Kiernan is one of those players, Sue, that you mentioned that's kind of missed the majority of the season through injury. She had the ankle injury, of course, played 20 minutes, I think, for Liverpool in one of the last games of the season. Like, is it a risk bringing those players, or do you have to look at someone like Leanne and just say, look, she brings something to the squad, she brings so much experience as well, that you nearly have to bring her regardless?
Yeah, I mean, they're the things that a coach has to weigh up, you know. And again, I heard Vera saying she had sleepless nights, and I can absolutely understand that. And she will have more than before that squad is picked. And even after you pick it, you know, you're saying, have I done the right thing? If you do take a gamble on a player that has been injured, but you have to weigh it up, I suppose. And the likes of Leanne and other players, I mean, you are going to look at what they've done before and what they can potentially do. And, you know, you still have a few weeks to go before that first game. You know, there's still, nearly almost a month, you know. So players like Leanne, players like Nia Fahy, who have been important members of the squad, Megan Campbell, you also want to make sure they recover fully from their injury. So whether they get as much minutes or not, I think it's probably more about the players that, you know, the fringe players that maybe haven't got too much game time, and looking at them to see if they can do a job, because you sort of know that Leanne can do a job, you know that, you know, Nia Fahy can do a job. So, but look, that's what the manager's there for. She has to make those tough decisions herself and her staff, and it's a tough time for everybody.
Can I ask you a little bit about what your perception of the whole contract situation is? Vera in the papers is saying that, to be clear, she wants to be here, but equally that there's other stuff going on in life, and it seems like the FAI have said they're willing to talk to her about a new deal, but that everything is just paused now. I don't know if the pause is going to resume when the squad gets down to the 23 and then they'll just get a deal done, or if the pause is until after the actual tournament itself. What's your take on where we are at the moment?
Well, you see an awful lot with managers in various sports. It's happened with rugby with Joe Schmidt. You know, it's happened with Andy Farrell. I think you see it with different managers in football. They tend to get renewed contracts before they go into big tournaments, you know. So I'm not surprised that those talks are taking place. I'm not really sure what Vera meant by her comments, to be honest with you. I just saw them there late last night. You know, look, she seems to be happy in the job. She seems to be enjoying it. Obviously the team are doing very well, so when that happens, you want to try and keep that continuity. So whether it's just that there's lots going on at the moment, and obviously the World Cup's the most important thing, maybe that's what she means by putting it on the back burner and not discussing it fully. I'm not really quite sure what she means, but look, at the end of the day, I'm sure it'll get done. If it's going to get done, it'll get done, put it that way.
Yeah, there's just a little kind of always caveat heading into a tournament before, in football in particular, if the tournament goes horribly wrong, if something happens, then you end up with a manager. But in this instance, it feels like we're in the middle of a cycle as opposed to coming to the end of a cycle, that actually the right thing to do would be to have continuity at least the way through to the next Euros. And so if she wants a deal, I don't see any reason not to do a deal, at least for 2 years.
I wouldn't see any reason not to do it either, to be honest. Look, we've qualified for our first major tournament. You know, that's obviously huge success, and the manager has to take a huge amount of credit for that, as well as the players, of course. So I wouldn't see why she wouldn't be given another contract if she wants it. So let's see what happens, I suppose, or unfolds in the coming days or weeks, or maybe she wants to put it on the back burner until after the World Cup. But I'd imagine she wants to get it out of the way and not have to worry about it.
What are those conversations? So you mentioned them there a minute ago. Talking to players about squads, obviously it's on another level. You know, when you're trying to have a discussion with a girl who's not made a World Cup squad, but that must be one of the most difficult aspects of management, having those difficult conversations.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I suppose, put it in inverted commas, I didn't have that opportunity to have those conversations because we didn't qualify for a major tournament. But I have had to have difficult conversations leaving players out of squads when they maybe thought they should be in a squad, or they thought they were fully fit to be in the squad, and it wasn't nice. You know, so I can only imagine what it's like now. It's heightened, much more. I mean, this is the first time we've ever been to a World Cup. It's taken so much to get there. So it's really going to be a very difficult conversation. And you see, you're even looking at squads being named at the moment, or even historically squads being named. There's always a surprise in a squad, and there's always a surprise either way, I suppose. We look and say, oh gosh, I wouldn't have left that player out, or or gosh, I definitely wouldn't have brought that player, you know. So everyone has their own opinion, but behind the scenes, obviously the management knows what's going on. You know, they know where players are at, they know what their form is like, they know how they fit into the environment on the pitch, maybe off the pitch might come into it. You know, it might be nip and tuck between two players, and you might look at, well, who has more experience, or, you know, is this player got more to offer in the future, you know, or is one player better around the camp? It might even come down to something as simple as that, you know, for the final one or two places. So it really is a difficult job, and it's going to be a tough time. And I've spoken to two people who have been closely involved in national teams over the years during my time, and I'm still heavily involved in women's football. Just over the last couple of days, we were just chit-chatting about the squad, and the three of us picked a different squad, you know, so I mean, that's how difficult it is really to pick it. But it's going to be a tough one. But again, I spoke to one or two of the players recently, and they said, look, it would be devastating if we don't make the squad, but we'll get over it in a couple of days and get behind the team. So I think that's the calibre of player you have there at the moment, in person really. But it will be tough. It'll be tough decisions and tough conversations.
Are there any significant changes, do you think, in terms of how Vera will approach this World Cup and the games themselves? The reason I'm asking this is because, you know, in Irish football history, there's always been this kind of weird convulsion in the build-up to a World Cup where we suddenly had to change our style of play to take account of, in America it was the heat, and we went from being stubbornly 4-4-2 to all of a sudden discovering 4-5-1 basically the week before. And Tommy Coyne comes into the team out of nowhere. So I'm just wondering, is there any possibility that Vera Pauw decides, actually, you know what, I'm going to go away from the thing that has made the team difficult to beat and qualify?
You know, you never know really what's in a manager's mind. I'd be surprised, to be totally honest with you, if she does change her style. She has stuck with the same style now for a long time, and it has served as well. In fairness, okay, might not be the all-out attacking football we all want to see of Irish teams in general. We talk about it with all the teams. But I mean, we're getting results, you know, and we're difficult to break down, and we're good on the counter attack, and everyone knows their role. So I would be very surprised, to be honest with you, if she deviates from it. But look, you just don't know. I suppose you don't know what's going to happen, and we've got a tough group, as we know. We've got the host team who are going to be playing in front of their home crowd. A lot of expectations on their shoulders. They've got some great individual players. One of the top strikers in the world, and Sam Kerr. We're playing the Olympic champions, who are also a difficult team to break down. I mean, they won the Olympics without winning a match, actually, really technically, because I think they won all their games. They had draws in the group stages, and then they won the games, the knockout games on penalties. So they're also a tough team to break down. And then Nigeria, who you just don't know what you're going to get. Like, they'll definitely be defend in numbers, but they'll also attack in numbers, and they'll be good on the counter. But I can't really see us deviating away from it. And, you know, tonight players are going to know what they need to do, and to be fair to those that come in, you know, it'd be unfair to ask them to do something different tonight that has only just been practiced in the last week. So I think we'll probably see a similar style tonight as well.
And then in terms of the actual squads that you and your two mates picked, is there anybody who's on the fringe of the squad who you think actually could catapult themselves into contention for a starting berth? And, you know, look, I'm not going to put any more pressure on players by saying this player should be in, this player should be out. I suppose we all agreed, one thing we did all agree on, that there's one or two players there that I know are only come back from injury, and they've been around a long time. And for us, they were on the plane, you know. But yeah, like I think there will be surprise. You know, I definitely think there will. There always is a surprise in the squad. There'll be someone that'll make it, maybe, that we'll all say, "Gosh, I wasn't expecting that." You know, but I don't want to put any more pressure, to be fair, on the players' shoulders, because I think there's going to be enough pressure on them. I think let the decision be made between the management and the players, and then we can analyse it later to death once it's made.
And that's something, so you mentioned earlier, that perhaps people don't think of when it comes to squads and selecting players, the personality types. Like, as you say, when you're around a hotel and you nearly forget that they're going to have so much time to themselves, whether they're playing pool or just chilling around and having meals. Like, having someone with a certain personality type that brings something, as you say, to the group is key at a tournament.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a squad of 23 travelling. How many realistically are going to play in the 3 games and hopefully more games after that? Are we saying 16, 17, 18 maybe? We don't know. You know, there's not going to be... Vera is known for not making a lot of changes, and you're not going to be changing the team either. You're going to try to have your consistent, you know, first 11, and there might be 12, 13, 14 players in contention for that, and then a couple of subs. So, you know, the rest of the players, you want players around the squad that are not going to be moping around, that are going to, you know, do what they have to do for the good of the team, not themselves. They're going to be together for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe, you know, more, hopefully. So it really is important to have a good dynamic and a good group that knit together. And look, from what we see and hear, this group does knit together, but you certainly don't want anyone that's, you know, in there maybe that doesn't fit in off the pitch either, as well as on it, because it's a long time to be together, and you know, they all have to get on together, which, you know, it seems like they all do, but it is a long time to be away from home, cooped up together.
Sue, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No problem, guys. Take care.
It's Sue Ronan giving us a preview of tonight's game against Zambia. A couple of quick comments for you from the Fountainstown Forlan, who hasn't been in touch in a while, unless we just missed it. Apologies if that was the case. Chloe Mustaki is a very impressive character. Easy to want her and her teammates to succeed. And then there's a random self-hating, usual Irish negging football conversation. Oh, I thought you said Nathan Collins was a genius. Like, oh. Thanks a million for that. We really appreciate.
Ger's gone to sleep, folks.
No, we're back. That's happened. And we're live. Look, yeah, okay. We like our players. We do. We hope they do well. We talk about their positive aspects. Bill Belichick always says, don't tell me what they can't do, tell me what they can do, right? And so that's a good attitude to have about sport, because it means that you maybe actually like spending your time watching this thing, as opposed to constantly going, oh, well, that's shit, isn't it? Oh, well, they're crap. Oh, well, they're the worst. Oh. Like, really, is that the way you want to live your life? Is it?
See, we're Irish, Ger, so we love misery. Like
we don't, though. We hate misery.
Well, we love wakes, don't we?
We drink ourselves away from the misery to forget about the misery, and that just makes us more miserable.
We love grim things as a country, don't we? Like that it all ties in. It's our natural identity. It's our nature. It's our Catholic guilt. It's the cups of tea at wakes. I don't know how we get onto this conversation, but
bottles of whiskey by 5 o'clock in the evening. Every bastard there was pisky.
There you go.
Do you know?
But it all ties in. We can't have fun things. We if we say something positive about Nathan Collins, Jesus, we're the worst people in the world.
You said he was the new Ezra Van Dijk. Thanks, Conor Joyce. Thanks for that. Yeah,
I'd like to hear where we actually said that as well. I'd like to show us where we exactly said Nathan Collins is the next Virgil van Dijk.
I mean, look,
he's fantastic. We probably did hype him up, of course, because
he played really, really well. He's got all of the accoutrements to be a really top Champions League level centre back. He's 22 and he's had a setback, and if he was to go to Brentford and get in that team as that manager's choice to be the centre back of that would be brilliant for him. And like, why shouldn't we be excited about that? I make no apologies for being excited about young Irish footballers coming through. Why wouldn't we be? What's the whole point of this thing?
Yeah, 22 by the way.
It's to escape from the misery.
Yeah, all
misery gots here. Dr. Death.
A format, is that myself?
Yeah.
That's my job. I have to bring up the death on the show. I think you'd nearly forget that Nathan Collins is 22, by the way, because he maybe looks a little bit older. He probably carries himself as someone who's a little bit older, and he's been around Premier League squads for a couple of years now. So we sometimes forget that these guys are kids in many ways, and Evan Ferguson is one of those. So we will give them time, but why not hype them up and have fun with the sport?
The hyping people up who aren't worthy of it is a jingoistic trait that we would certainly criticise in one of our near neighbours, for example. So we didn't hype Evan Ferguson up. We got excited by the fact that he's really, really good. Yeah. I think it's legitimate to get excited about anybody who's making it in the Premier League at the moment, because it's so bloody difficult. Look at the money that is slushing around in the Premier League. They can literally sign any player from anywhere in the entire world. And now it turns out Saudi Arabia can do the same. Jamie Carragher on Twitter this morning is complaining about the fact that Marca are reporting, according to a website I've never heard, Transfer News Live, with a blue tick. It's blue tick on Twitter. It must be real, Jamie. It must be real. So they're saying that Bernardo Silva is on the verge of a move to Saudi Arabia, and Carragher is losing his mind about this. Because he feels like I was okay when it was the Outlads, but now it's like good players.
Well, the Saudis taking over football, and football transfers is hardly a surprising thing, is it? Given what's happened in sport in recent years.
Saudi have taken over golf, the big boxing fights, and now they want to take over football. The sports washing needs to be stopped at Premier League, at UEFA.
Trying to bring out his inner Gary Neville, I think.
Bit late though. Gary Neville got to the top of the mountain first.
He did.
Planted his flag, and he's beating down anybody else who comes there.
Nobody remembers the second man up to climb Everest, do they?
Well, it was Edmund Hillary, wasn't it?
Well, Hillary was first, technically.
He wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely wasn't first. He clearly was not first at all.
Yeah, he was the Westerner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's the white guy. Yeah. First white guy to do it. Is there a special prize for being the first white guy? Turns out there is. They name a lot of shit after you. Pardon my French, sorry.
Yeah. Buzz Aldrin possibly is a better reference.
Yeah.
Definitely was the second man on the moon.
Yeah, you do remember him though.
True. Yeah, I definitely do. The NASA sticker on my laptop.
OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Right. At 23 minutes past 8, I'm delighted to say we have Patrick Horgan with us this morning. Patrick, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you? How are you getting on?
You're making some fibre deliveries for Virgin, are you?
Yeah, that'll be on the 27th in Patrick Street in Cork City. We're going to be giving away thousands of euros worth of prizes in boxes of cereal, basically.
Very good.
That's the job.
Technically, of course, I presume you'd prefer at that stage to be preparing for an All-Ireland semi-final, as it would have been. So are you a good spectator over the last couple of weeks? Are you enjoying watching hurling like the rest of us?
Not really, no. It was a bit kind of tough for us the way we kind of went out, so kind of trying to stay away from it as much as I can now for a while, and maybe to the end of the championship, maybe the All-Ireland final or something, I might have a peek at, but it's a bit sore at the moment, so I kind of just try to leave it off.
You must have seen the scoreline when Tip walloped Offaly at the weekend, and I know you're going to be reluctant to answer this for fear of the way that people might take it up, but does the championship structure make sense that a team like yours, who were so close to going through up until the very last few seconds, aren't in the championship when teams from lower divisions are then catapulted in?
Well, I haven't thought of it that way. I kind of see it like we knew before the Munster Championship started that, you know, the top three qualify and you're either in then at that stage or you're out. How close we got, like we talking over days, like, because, you know, it was like a puck of a ball over the course of 3 games where it made us qualified. But yeah, like for us, we knew like what was the situation before it even started, so we just didn't do enough to qualify, and as competitive as we were, like kind of wasn't good enough from us. Like we needed to be better in certain kind of areas, and that's something to work on, I suppose.
Is it more of a sickener that it feels like the team is better now than even sometimes when they've managed to get through the qualifying system, as difficult as it was, that it felt like everything was clicking towards the right direction, but just the competition was more fierce this year?
Yeah, like we were as fierce as it. We were like as good as anyone in that championship. We know that ourselves as well. Like, and the way we applied ourselves all year, like I don't think we let ourselves down in any game over the course of the whole year. So that's something to be positive about going into the new year, I suppose. Before, we wouldn't have got that consistency in performance throughout the season, and I think the season just gone, while we didn't qualify, we were like pretty consistent throughout, and that's like a really good thing, that you can kind of say, look, we went through a whole season, we didn't play poorly or like dip our performance in any game. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes here or there, but overall we were competitive through the whole season, and that's really good.
So that gap, Patrick, between your Limerick and the rest, or perceived gap I should say, has that narrowed in the last year or so? Like it appears Limerick, I suppose everyone had them on a pedestal in recent years. Everyone said, oh sure, they're just a bigger team, they're physically stronger men and all the rest, but that gap seems to have narrowed, looking from the outside in anyway.
Yeah, definitely. They were really, they were unstoppable for a few years, but there's no gap now. Like, I suppose it's just coming down to you know, one puck of a ball, one play, one missed pick, one strike to hand, one missed hand pass. It's that small, and unfortunately this year in 2 important games, like 2 little things happened, or a couple of little things happened in either game that, you know, swung it the opposition's way, and that put us out.
Do you pay any attention to what pundits say? Like, you probably have a bit of time now, as you say. You'll try and not maybe watch that much hurling, but do you listen to the punditry and the analysis around games maybe more so now than when you were a younger hurler? Or?
No, I wouldn't, and it's not because I don't want to listen to the fellas on it, because they're obviously really good at what they do, but I just try not to watch, because I just don't want to I don't want to form my opinion about like opposition or what other people think, like, and you could be leading into a game then against that opposition and you're thinking differently about them because of things you've heard, and so I try to stay away from all that.
The 2023 you had, like, I remember you talking about the decision to bench yourself for the All-Ireland quarter-final against Galway last year, and I suppose the impact that had on you, and it probably gives you a kick up the backside as well in some ways. Like, do you see that as a turning point, something that's nearly prolonged your career in some ways maybe?
No, I'd always be kind of the way of I'd be trying to improve myself all the time, whether that's like hurling or physically, and that was no different either last year. Like, I applied myself absolutely the same way I always do. It's just, I suppose, when you're not, every player is the same. Like, and every player needs to be confident, and someone needs to instill confidence into them to, that the people that are going to choose you to play have confidence in you, and that's a really strong thing. And that's one thing that we had throughout the whole year this year. I suppose everybody couldn't have a complaint with, like, I suppose, getting encouragement from everybody else within the panel, and that's a good place to be.
Did the shape of the team change significantly this year as the season wore on, and even within games? Did you become more flexible as a group to try and get the most out of where you're strong? I'm
not really sure how it happened. I just think that with a lot of kind of new fellas, you could call it, onto the panel early on in the year, and they all started getting chances early on in the year, and they started taking them, and then there was fellas that were injured were coming back, and all of a sudden, like, I think we had like at least two per position that were really strong in that position and really putting their hands up to play. So like that drove competition within the panel then, and I suppose it was every training session then was like, look, this is a trial basically to get on the team, and that's literally the way it was. There was like 40 fellas throughout the year just driving on, and like you could have put any 15 on the field.
It did feel a little bit like the team got to grips with what from a tactical perspective. I want to go back to, there was a league game I think against Limerick, and Limerick started lights out, looked amazing, but it felt like at half time something changed, and you became more aggressive with a press as a forward unit, and suddenly everybody was more in the game, and it felt like the analysis afterwards was, Cork wanted it more in the second half. But then I remember, I think it was talking to Anthony Nash afterwards, like, actually there was a subtle change there which allowed the forwards to be closer to the Limerick players in possession, and that unlocked something in the team. Did that happen?
I don't know, possibly, but on the night when you're playing or during a game, like, there's so many little things that are going on, like, do you actually push up and leave space behind, or do you kind of fall back and hope the amount of passes that the defence have to take to come out, they kind of mess one up. And sometimes it's just, you don't do anything except just get a small bit more aggressive, and I suppose just close down the ball. Like, just sometimes, like, the opposition could be like so good. I remember Limerick in the championship, was it last year, first game of the championship, we were told we weren't pushing up like fast enough, but we didn't get a chance to push up because they were so good delivering the ball, and other times then you'd push up and they'd drop the ball and they would say that's great pressure, but it's all just bits and pieces that are going on in the game, and that's what it comes down to. So
it's not a trend. It doesn't feel like it's something that you collectively worked on, but it's more situational. It depends on the current. I guess what I'm asking here is that, like, it felt a little bit like it was on purpose that you were doing that, but obviously, yeah.
Well, probably what we were doing, we wanted to start off doing, and we just weren't doing it. So that could have been the reason as well. We probably got a bit of a shove on to get going in the game. Like, we probably weren't in the game in the first half. But I suppose the one thing we kind of put a lot of emphasis on, like the year just gone, like is the effort that we put in, like, and everybody putting in the same effort and just wanting the ball back, I suppose. And after that, like, you'd be surprised a lot of things kind of fall into place, like if you go about that hard enough, you know.
It's funny, like you probably spend hours. You could read column inches and listen to interviews and analysis, Patrick, about those things, the small details of in-game tactics. And yet, I suppose for yourself, when you're involved in it and you're literally in the moment, you're probably on a different plane of consciousness in some ways. When you're in the middle of a championship game, you probably aren't really thinking about it. It's more reactive, is it?
Yeah, when the ball's around, definitely you're just reacting. But I think it's good sometimes to just take a couple of breaths and realise like where you are and the important things that need to be done at that time. And you can be running around like a headless chicken for the day. Like, but I think sometimes it's just kind of good to set yourself in what needs to be done next and go and do it the best you can.
Like, there's a lot of young hurlers in that Cork squad this year compared to last even as well, and a lot more coming through when you look at the 20s teams and that as well. Like, does that give you extra motivation in training as well? Because you kind of look at them and they bring that hunger and desire that maybe you would have had back when you were coming into the team at first.
Yeah, as I said there a while ago, like, they all come onto the panel and they're training so hard and they're so like curious about how they can be better players themselves. And like, that's very strong, like, when you're on a panel of 40 and everybody wants to be better, like, so you're kind of landed with, you either want to get better or you want to go home. That's basically it. And like, they all came in, started playing games, and straight away they just took to it straight away, which is not easy to do either. And it's great. Like, training the whole year has been brilliant, and it's just that's just a good environment to be in when you have 40 players that all are going into one direction and want to be as best as they can be.
What's your role within that then, as one of the more experienced players? Do you feel conscious that you have to help them acclimatise, or do you feel that actually you can't patronise them and say, oh, you need to do this, this and this, but actually going out and just demonstrating? How do you approach that?
I think we're all kind of close enough, like, that we all speak to each other. And I said there to someone yesterday that we've trained, like, say, at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever. And if you're not in the field by 6, you're late. So that'll tell you the kind of level the fellas are at. And I suppose when we're on the field for that hour beforehand, like, a lot of fellas talk and you get around fellas in your own position and see what works for them, what works for you, and it's kind of a back and forward thing, like, and we're taking the nuggets, I suppose, from each other the whole time. And it's good. It's good now to learn that with everybody,
And then specifically your role on the field, you were talking about everybody needs confidence. What gave you confidence this year about what your instructions were and what your role was on the field during matches?
I suppose for me personally, it was just keep showing for there's only a couple of things you can do in your position that you always do, and one of them for a full forward is like showing for the ball, taking on your man, closing down the opposition. Just probably three things like that you focus on, and then the other things, like a ball will break, you pick it, you hand pass it off or whatever like that, but you're kind of in the game if you do the first 2 or 3, like.
Patrick, we're probably blue in the face talking about rule changes and the state of Gaelic games in this country, and the attack and mark in Gaelic football, certainly for one, and even the weight of the sliotar, the colour of the sliotar, all the rest. Is there anything in hurling at the moment that you'd like to see changed, or that you'd be unhappy with as a player?
No, I think, to be honest with you, like, you couldn't touch hurling, like, looking at it now. And even the sliotars, I know you mentioned the sliotars there, and I was the first fella like to give out mad about them there last year, because they weren't up to scratch. But I must say, the sliotars we used this year were a lot different and easier to use, and they were fine.
Weight wise or colour wise or both?
I'm over the colour thing now, like, but I just, the feel and how they fly are, that they're important, like how the ball flies when you hit it, or like, when you're guiding a ball. Like, I found the old ones, you couldn't guide them, you didn't know what way they were going to go, like, But I think these ones, there's a slight bit of give in them, so you can kind of feel the ball on the bus when you're striking it, and you can kind of guide it a bit better.
Must be important when you're taking frees as well, like that. Those little tiny minutiae of the skill set is so important. Like, you need to, not to get all philosophical, but become one with the sliotar almost.
Yeah, like you see fellas, like how the way they fly the ball, like, so if they cut across it, I found like the last couple of years, even watching oppositions taking frees like from far out, they'd cut the ball, but when they cut it at the left, say, post, it would go left as well. So like that, there's no confidence there in any sliotar, like, you know.
That's fixed.
If you try and cut it and it goes left, like, you're in big trouble. Like.
And is that fixed now, do you think?
Yeah, the sliotar's this year have been really good, I have to say it. They don't travel as far, like, and that's fine. That was probably the main aim of them coming in. But I do think they were a lot better now this year.
One other thing that I need to talk to you about, we're given to understand that TJ Reid will continue to hunt you down at the top of the scoring charts until he gets there. Is this something that you're interested in or aware of? Because it's one of the great battles in modern Irish hurling history that you're definitely a part of, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's a nice thing to be involved in, like, isn't it? A lot of scores there, but yeah, like, he's probably one of the best players ever to play the game, like, and, you know, I'll battle it out with him there for a while if he wants, and sure, I don't know what, you know, he's still carrying on. He probably is an all-round semi-final and final to play, and it's good for him, and it's good to be a part of that, I suppose. That's all.
46-year-old Patrick Horgan against 45-year-old TJ in 10 years' time.
He's actually older than me.
Oh, is he? All right.
Yeah. So
you knew that very quickly.
That's because everyone's on about my age. There's no one on about anyone else's age.
So you've plenty of time left then.
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm grand away.
But the scoring thing does matter. Like, it's Ireland not great at this, like, paying attention to stuff until eventually somebody goes off and does the maths. Like, hang on a second, this is actually a really interesting story here. You know, two generational hurlers who've gone at it for the best part of over a decade at this point, and we're privileged as sports fans to be watching this. What's that like to be in the middle of?
It's good, I suppose, but the only reason I kind of want to be a part of it is because it means that in an individual game that I'm playing next, I just want to score. I just want to do like what I'm supposed to do and score. So I don't really think, I'd say it'll be a good thing to like look back on and say, oh yeah, that was class at the time or whatever. But at the moment, for me, it's like, yeah, I just want to carry on tipping around and playing and try and score what I can for our team every match, and see where that lands me.
Yeah, like, and in a way though, this one I think everybody is allowed to, you know, it's a team sport, but ultimately your job is to score. You're in the full forward line to score as heavily as you possibly can, and you have to be as ruthless as you can. So it's not like it's one of those I need to put the team first. You, by putting the team first, you are scoring. That's your job, right?
Yeah. That's what any forward has to do, really. That's his kind of primary role, to score and show for the ball and win the ball and score. That's basically it.
Do you find the extra little bit of attention, Patrick, on the pitch because of your scoring exploits as well? Like, I'm sure we see examples of sledging in the game and at different points, and it probably focuses in on you, I'd imagine, in the Cork forward line.
Not very little, actually. I always wonder how footballers get the time on the pitch to talk to each other, but we, like, hurlers actually don't speak that much. Might be an odd line here or there, but it could be maybe funny more than anything. Like, I don't ever remember like getting into any big conversation, you know, because the ball's coming too fast. You could get the ball from the goalkeeper now when you're on the full forward line. So if you turn to talk to someone, the ball could be there. Like.
Well, listen, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I think you might enjoy the quarterfinals and semi-finals if you could bring yourself to look at them. The game is pretty good at the moment.
We'll see. Horgan's fine. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Good stuff. Thanks a million. Keep scoring. Cheers.
Down. Thanks.
It's Patrick Horgan there, locked in a celebrity death match with TJ Reid at the top of the scoring charts. I think it's one of those things that we should be celebrating and getting stuck into.
Yeah, it's we've had this discussion before. The GA record keeping probably could have been officially better than it has been, but at least with this one, we're not looking back in 10 years' time going, oh, they actually were locked in a battle, but we didn't realise it at the time. So it's good to be invested in it right now.
Okay, John Duggan's going to join us in a little while, I think. Yeah, he is. Yeah. In the meantime, Cameron is here because we haven't talked about the Champions and Challenge Cup draws. We don't need to pay any attention to the Challenge Cup draw because there's no Irish teams in it, obviously. So
nope.
This is really a Champions Cup draw.
Unless you're a real rugby hipster and you're just going to watch it anyway.
That would be you, but yeah.
Yeah. So interesting draw for all the Irish provinces. So Connacht are in with Lyon. They've a visit back to Pat Lam. Nice. With Bristol Bears, they're in with the Bulls, Bordeaux, Saracens. Ulster have probably the toughest of the lot in that they've Harlequins, Racing, Bath and Toulouse all in the same pool in Pool 2. Munster have Bayonne, Glasgow, Exeter, Toulon and Northampton, but I think the pick of the pools there is Pool 4. Leinster have the Stormers, Sale Sharks, Leicester, Stade Francais and La Rochelle.
Right, so that's
that big.
Little old La Rochelle, who no one respects.
Yeah, the small team out on the Atlantic coast. So that's quite tasty.
Well, this was always the risk that Roger and La Rochelle ran at losing to Toulouse at the weekend. Like, you were always going to be.
All comes back to bite.
Someone had to get Leinster, I guess, as the second seeds, didn't they?
They did, yeah. You could have given Ulster La Rochelle again. That would have been funny. But yeah, it's quite tasty. I'm putting my hand up right now. If anybody wants me to go over to Bristol or Lyon or any of the places, I'm happy to fall on that sword.
Okay.
Not to go into the politics of it all, but obviously the English and French rugby clubs ruined this competition with their nonsensical approach to it, and so there are fewer games now. And so although there are 4 6-team groups, you don't play everybody in your group.
No. So the fixtures are still to be announced, but there's 6 teams in each group, as you say, but you don't play the one from your own league. So let's take Connacht, for instance. They will not play the Bulls because they're also in the URC. So you've got Saracens, Bordeaux, Bristol and Lyon coming up, and we don't know whether those games are home or away yet, but you only play a team once. There's no home and away fixture, so it's a complete lottery.
So you play 4 games, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And 2 are at home, 2 are away.
Yeah.
Right. So Leinster could have La Rochelle at home or away, and they could have Stade Francais at home or away, or they could have Leicester at home or away, and they could have Sale at home or away.
Absolutely. Like, the sensible way of doing it is that you have 1 French team at home and 1 away. But I mean, judging on how they've revamped this form, I don't think EPCR are interested in doing the sensible way of things. I am not a fan of this format whatsoever. I cannot see the point in playing for last 16 places, which have been the bane of the tournament for the last couple of years. They're so unexciting. They ruin the momentum towards the actual good games. I don't know what they're doing with this, to be honest.
All right. Okay, Cameron, good stuff. An excellent explainer. Thank you very much. We didn't fall into the Kevin Kilban Nations League. Well, so if the draw, so if you come out first, and if that ball's hot, and anyway,
not quite that far, yeah.
Shifty Lad wants to ask, has anybody watched Ride to Survive? It's the best thing Netflix have done, better than Formula 1 in my opinion. Tough going, peloton waits for no one.
Hearing good things about this, haven't seen it yet, but apparently
is it called Ride to Survive?
It must be. I hadn't seen the name on it. Just the Tour de France documentary, everyone's calling it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So maybe that's maybe Ride to Survive is a little moniker put on it by the commenter. We'll find out. But yeah, and it really apparently gives an insight into the life of some of those cyclists who are involved in teams, and their sole existence and reason for existence is to help, of course, the top 1 or 2 cyclists on the team.
The domestiques.
Tour
de France Unchained.
Tour de France Unchained.
Unchained.
Okay.
Off the chain, innit?
See what they've done there. Bikes, chains. Yeah, very good. So yeah, that's on the list for sure.
All right. John Duggan, 8:46. Good morning to you.
Morning, Ger Shane, and Cameron was never seen again.
Yeah, gone.
Credits will do. How are you?
Good, yourselves?
Not bad. What's going on?
Well, it was the longest day of the year last night, which is great. And we have the Zambia game tonight, 7:30. Republic of Ireland women's team against a team that's also qualified for the World Cup. So Vera Pauw wants to see similar style of football to Nigeria, who is going to make the 23 strong squad. She'll obviously see a bit tonight. Katie McCabe will be rested for that game, sell out, which is great. Leona Maguire, who is going to win a major and it's a case of when, and I'll slip in a virtual insanity 10 each way on around 22-1 for this week's PGA Championship in Baltusrol in New Jersey, which starts this lunchtime. We know she won last week, the Meyer Classic in Michigan, 21 under par. I was just looking at her trajectory. She was 177th at the end of 2020 in the world rankings. Now she's 12th.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes. 28 years of age from Cavan, and she's got Shane Lowry's former caddy in the bag, Dermot Byrne. And I just feel that the Solheim Cup was a huge thing for her in terms of arriving. We all arrived. The great stars in the world arrived. Remember Brian O'Driscoll and the hat-trick and that kind of thing. And that was her arrival as a rookie, 4.5 points out of 5. And she just has, in my mind, the mental acumen to be a major champion. And she has 5 chances. There are 5 women's majors as opposed to 4 in the men's game. And the great thing about the women's game at the moment is they're going to really good courses like Baltusrol, hosted US Open, USPGA in the past for the men's game, and the US Open next month is in Pebble Beach. So these are the types of classic courses I think Leona Maguire will thrive on. The course is a bit long this week, which might not suit her that well, but all other aspects of her game are very, very solid, and she's 9th in strokes in the scoring average this year on the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour. It's a very competitive tour. It's got a lot of deep, a bit like the men's tour at the moment. Anybody can win. Maybe 20 to 30 players can win a major, but Leona's right there.
Second LPGA title, yeah. As soon as you break the duck and get that first one over the line, you kind of the water just comes through. Then she's gonna push on, and I don't know how many she's going to finish her career with, but if she continues in this trajectory, and as you said, John, I think mentally she's unbelievably strong. I know she probably has a sports psychologist and all that behind her as well, but when she speaks, she clearly speaks with someone who doesn't really carry the weight of her expectation.
That's her amateur career, being the number 1 amateur in the world. And she already has top 10s in majors, top 10 at the US Open, and a tie for 4th at the Open Championship at Muirfield last year. So it's really exciting. I think it's really exciting. And we have Stephanie Meadow in that as well, not to forget her. Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Seamus Power, all playing in the Travellers Championship in Connecticut this week. That starts today. Tom McKibben, who we know won recently, is involved in the BMW International Open Munich, 1 under par. And what else we got? Nathan Collins and Dara Shea potentially on the move. It seems as if the Collins-Wolves journey might be coming to a close. From a financial fair play perspective, I think they need to sell a few players. They already sold, obviously, Ruben Neves to Saudi Arabia, and Brentford have come in with 2 bids for Nathan Collins, who, if he ended up in the defence with Ben Mee, could be a good thing for him. Were they at Burnley together? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. And we have, obviously, Dara Shea now going to be a teammate of Josh Cullen's at Burnley because he's got a medical today. It seems like Chelsea are having a fire sale at the moment, and we're obviously into silly season with the back pages now for the next couple of months, but it'll come around quickly, folks, won't it? By the time we're enjoying the dessert of the Women's World Cup, the Premier League will be on our shores.
It will. It's creeping up there. How did you spend the summer solstice, ssummer equinox, John?
Killiney Bay, which is this beach down the south of Dublin.
Beautiful.
So I kind of like, it's up near my home, so I walk it a lot.
You don't do any hippie stuff, kind of?
No, hippie is I'm the opposite of hippie. Whatever the opposite of hippie is, I'm not a hippie.
Your inner hippie will start coming out over the next few years. That's my prediction.
No, Ger, it'll never happen. There'll never be more than a 3 or 4 day stubble.
There
will never be anything but 5-star luxury in my life.
Duggan skinny dipping in Dublin Bay, I'm telling you, inside the next 5 years, guaranteed to happen.
Well,
there's a thought.
Well, we'll see. Might be like Johnny Ward's Instagram life is very much dominated by 3 things: swimming, cycling, and food.
My sister would be into a lot of that hippie stuff, my older sister, and she'd be I think there was one summer solstice or summer equinox where we were home in Monaghan in recent years, where she had a fire pit at the back, and you just wrote down things that you wanted to let go and threw them in the fire. It was very, very, I have to say,
hopes of winning the All-Ireland.
Possibly, John. Possibly. Whatever the opposite of thrown into the fire. That's
the Instagram world is amazing. There's a guy called Connor Wilson. I don't know if you follow this guy.
Amazing.
This guy.
Yeah.
I just feel so inadequate every time I look at this.
Yeah.
His stuff.
He works for Primetime.
What does he do?
He's the world's best barbecuer.
Oh, right.
It's sensational. It's like 3 days out, he's making food, and you're like,
how do you even begin?
I've put on weight looking at it.
Yeah. You follow the American guy, John. I saw you sharing his stuff.
Oh, Barbecue Big Jake.
He's like,
hey everybody,
the most southern man.
That's where it's at.
Well, it's amazing too. So yeah, if anyone wants to check that out.
Well, his voice is incredible.
The accent.
The food is extremely unhealthy, which is probably
that's the slight downside here.
But it's amazing the phrases. It's amazing what marketing can do. And there's another guy called Old Time Hockey. I don't know if you've seen him. He's got about 1.5 million views on TikTok.
Old Time Hockey.
Old Time Hockey got 1.5 million followers on Instagram, and he's got 2 dogs. He lives in Upper Michigan, and he lives one of these kind of wild lives. And he plays like 80s video games and Game Boy and stuff, and you kind of feel that kind of what's it, ASMR, or is that the that's the
autosensory meridian response, not I don't know what Ger called it that time. Autoerotic asphyxiation. which is a different thing.
Our last got today, Aidan O'Brien, Emily Dickinson
segue
in the Gold Cup 420. Willie Mullins, the man looking to bid to win the prize with Echoes and Rain as well. So from Old Time Hockey to Willie Mullins in 6 degrees of separation.
In less than 60 seconds. Chef's Table Barbecue, that series on Netflix is unbelievable if you're into your barbecue stuff. Right.
It just feels like it would take me about 5 years to do what that guy does. It just looks impossible.
I can't speak, so you're going to have to speak, sorry.
You should get him, I'm sure, he'd give you a lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, lads.
Anything else, JD?
Unless there's something missing in that mad, wild tangent. A slight tangent. This comes to OTB AM.
It was the segue to Ascot for me.
To be like the rival tangent, a slight tangent. It's kind of the rogue version.
Thank you very much. More from John on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk. If you're still using the old Off the Ball app, you need to get the very latest version, as the old app will soon be retired to pasture to make way for the new shiny thoroughbred. If your app hasn't already updated, hit the App Store or the Play Store now, or see OTB Social for direct links to update. Some highlights from the OTB Podcast Network for you today. The latest F1 pod with Shane, Vincent Hogan in conversation with Joe last night, and the Gaelic football preliminary quarter-finals preview. Wildcard weekend, baby. I mean, it's just right there for you if you want it. After the break, James Tracy's You Had to Be There. First, Vincent Hogan talking about Roy Keane.
I've written so many pieces about Roy Keane over the years, and I've always said, my biggest problem in journalism was that if Roy sneezed, I'd get a phone call to do a 2-page spread on Roy. And I know the feeling. I've often been accused on social media, my God, you're so obsessed with Roy Keane.
Right.
I honestly, Joe, would not have written a single line about Roy Keane in 20 years if I could have got away with it. I don't find Roy fascinating as a pundit. I find Roy kind of just playing almost to satire, that he's just endlessly cross and endlessly intolerant of people around him, but he's doing exactly what he said he wouldn't do. But I still would say that when he wants to be, he's very intelligent.
Funny, I would have thought anytime you've written about Roy Keane, it's because you're fascinated by him, as opposed to you got a phone call.
No.
I thought in '93 they said you could do what you want.
No, well, that changed. Obviously, I didn't do it well enough.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
OTB Rugby.
If it was me, you'd absolutely love to be 17 up as opposed to being 17 points down. There's no upside to being 17-0 down at that stage, It's a shocking start, and we've been blown out of the water, and thankfully we managed to shift the momentum live, which is difficult in sport to do.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
All right, it's one of our favourite slots of the week. It's You Had to Be There, and our guest this week is James Tracy. James, how the hell are you?
Not too bad, gents. In a nicer environment than usual.
That looks pretty sweet.
So we're over here with the family in Greece at the moment. So it's a slight upgrade from sitting beside you two at the studio.
And the weather looks terrible. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not one for lying out, so I'm taking solitaire in the shade as usual.
Okay, well, we're glad to distract you from the difficulty of finding shade in the Greece sunshine. People know the premise of this at this stage. You pick 5 things that have lived with you and stayed with you and kind of got you out of your seat. The first one, though, I want to start with from in sequence here is all the way back in the year 2000 when Ruby Walsh won the Grand National for the first time on Papillon. And people probably remember this, but loads of people probably too young to remember. But it was his father, Ted Walsh's horse, and that was where the drama and I think the emotion of the whole thing came. But for you, it was a very local story.
Yeah, incredible. So, like Ruby Walsh, I grew up in Kill Village in Kildare, and Ruby Walsh was one of the main, still is one of the biggest stars to come out of the village. But the Grand National is such a big deal in general, but to have someone who grew up the road riding in it with a real chance on his father's horse, and for anyone who watched the race, very dramatic finish. He looks like he's got to win, and then he ends up kind of finding a second gear with about half a furlong left and wins it by about 2 lengths. It was unbelievable. And then what unfolded from that, our primary school was going nuts, everyone's going nuts, but they brought Papillon. Actually, they do it in this day and age with health and safety. Papillon came into the schoolyard. Everyone, like I said, it was about 1,000 kids all around. In fairness, it was probably the calmest horse in the world. There was a huge parade up the town. There was people coming out from the local, hopping on his back, riding out the finish. How there wasn't an accident, I don't know, but incredible memory, and they're well and truly a massive part of the village, and it was unbelievable to see Ruby be able to get it done for his family and also for Kill and for his father.
Yeah, because I think most people would have grown up watching Ted as an analyst on telly, and sometimes you forget that actually he was still an active trainer the whole way through that.
Yeah, and it gives a feeling of, there's a lot of horses are a big thing in Kildare, especially horse racing, and it's the feeling of someone who winning something that you think is so unattainable, unachievable, and it gives beliefs to kind of the next generation. So that's the amazing part of it. But for us, the crack and the excitement of having someone who you see at mass, someone you see in the shop, and they're winning kind of one of the hardest things to do in horse racing. It's kind of you want to win a Gold Cup, you want to win the Grand National, you want to win the Irish Grand National. They're the kind of the big 3 in jumps racing, especially from where I'm from.
Were you into racing automatically in advance of that? Did that get you into racing afterwards?
So would have been everything horsey. So my sister would have show jumped internationally, and we would have hunted, and we would have went to the races. Punchestown was and Mace Race course was part of our DNA and our yearly schedule. So anything to do with horses, we were kind of. I grew up around it, and every weekend we were at a show, at a meet, at a hunt. It was everything like that.
And the Grand National, a staple probably of your house growing up, regardless. But to see someone from your county winning it that must have been so special.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. As I said, the crack, the village, I was far too young then. I think I was 9 years old, so I wasn't on the pints. But I don't think there was. There was any kegs left untapped by the end of the weekend. It was unbelievable for the village, and he's a sporting legend in racing, but for Kill Village, it was a big day.
So did you say there was lads just running out from the pub, hopping on the horse and reenacting the end of the race?
yeah, so loose, but I think in reality, if anyone would have known the Walshes, or I wouldn't be surprised if those lads maybe had worked in the yard, or I'm sure they weren't just letting randoms, but I'm a 9-year-old kid, obviously I'm just seeing these random lads coming out of the boozer as he's walking up and hopping on the horse and doing the full thing. yeah, no, it was great crack. But yeah, it was one for the memory book, all right, and a special day for the village.
If you hadn't got involved in rugby, would there have been an interest in a career in racing or in show jumping or in horses?
So I certainly didn't have the frame to be a jockey, but show jumping, do you know what? I show jumped from and hunted from about 6 years old up to about 12, and I was never any use at it, but I enjoyed it. So you know, I used to just tag along and do it, but it was never something that kind of caught my eye, mainly because I wasn't good at it. But I definitely enjoyed it.
If your sister did it for Ireland, she must have been pretty good.
Yeah, she was all right. She's handy. She's still pretty good. But yeah, the benefit was in ponies is that it's kind of done by age and depending on the size of the pony. So when she'd move on to the next level, I'd get the hand-me-down. So I did be quite competitive when I got the hand-me-down at the lower levels. But that was my cheat code, unfortunately. When I tried to jump at the next step up in the elite level, I was way off. But I had good crack doing it, and I loved hunting as well. It was good fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
The second one that we have on your list is actually also in Kildare, not that far away. I'm fairly sure it's at the K Club. It is. Rory McIlroy winning the Irish Open in 2016.
Yeah. So again, it was one of those moments where I didn't anticipate. I wasn't there to. I wasn't following Rory, or I wasn't. There. Like Ruby, where I had the same attachment, but we'd managed, myself, my wife, a girlfriend at the time. We were going out a little while, but we went down because it's only up the road from where I grew up, and we'd blagged our way into the clubhouse somehow, and we're again blagged our way onto the balcony. You see that iconic shot that he takes, but as it unfolded, of course, my wife's at the bar. I'm now knowing that he was 2 behind going into 16, so I kind of pricked my ears up of what's going on, and he's about 253 out, I think, and hits a 5-wood. They have a plaque now on the fairway where he hit it from, but hits a 5-wood to about 3 feet. And it was one of those moments where you just know, okay, this was something special. And it was him, he's already, I think he was 27 at that point, so he was well known and everything like that. But I think he was coming into the peak of his powers, and he was amazing to watch. But yeah, just seeing that live, glad I didn't turn around and follow my wife to the bar and miss that iconic moment. But yeah, it was just one of those golf moments and sporting moments where everyone around was just like, wow, like when everything's on the line. I think he might have been one shot up, but he was definitely one behind going into 16. I think he might have eagled that and given himself a bit of a jump on the scoreboard, but everything on the line, 250 whatever out, and putting it to nearly a tap in for him anyway. Definitely not for me at 3 feet, but it was incredible.
When Shane Lowry won the Irish Open, obviously in the rain, he was an amateur, and we didn't quite know what an amazing career he was going to have. Harrington had obviously won it in the meantime as well, but it was still kind of when the Irish Open was slightly off Broadway. McIlroy coming back to it, and it being at the K Club, had that bang of big event feel, and so for him to produce his very best in front of the Irish crowd, when we were all talking ourselves into, it's so difficult for the Irish golfers to come and play at their very best, I think it was a real kind of, okay, this guy, look at that talent. Like it's obscene levels of talent that we see on TV, but he's actually doing it in front of us. That's the special bit, I think, about it.
Yeah, and having watched it back, you see how much it means to him as well. Like he's proper fired up for every big moment that he had. He was properly fired up, and I loved that McIlroy. He used to bomb the drive down, and he'd walk past his partner and he'd stand at his ball. He was such a dominant force in golf, and he still is. And it's been amazing to watch his journey and have someone Irish be that prominent in a sport that's clearly global and so difficult to be in the top 100. Never mind in the top 10.
Regardless of the fact that you're in a team sport, James, you must take little modicums of, I guess, enlightenment and things from individual sports people like Rory that maybe you look and say, well, Jesus, clearly their mentality, as you say, going down the stretch, 3 holes to play, when the pressure's most on at his home open, you must take things from that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of professional sports people love playing golf and tennis, and if you're like individual sports, because it really hones you in and it gives you that same kick of, you're accountable for yourself on this, so it gets the juices flowing from that side of things, and especially in golf, it's just you versus the course. Can be very humbling. I've been humbled a million times over by the golf course, but we have a few handy golfers in Leinster, so we had good fun over COVID when we had a bit more time to play, and a lot of lads kind of stuck with it and got the bug. What is your own game like? What are your strengths and weaknesses? A lot of weaknesses, not many strengths. I think that'd sum it up.
Is Sexton the best golfer?
He's definitely top 5. I think Frawley, Jordan Larmour, himself, Dan Sheehan, and who else? There'd probably be about 10 or 11 lads who'd be single figures, and the lads I named there would be below 5, in and around 5 or below. Frawley picked up golf.
That's sickening. Go on, Frawley.
I know, yeah. Yeah, it's another one. So I think Iggy could be off 2 maybe. But yeah, himself and Frawley I think could be the lowest. Frawley only picked it up. We played a golf scramble and he never played before, so we had him ranked 4th. So anyway, he hopped in with the guys who would have been a couple 2 low handicaps and 1 mid-range, and he was the dud. And the lads romped home by about 7 shots, and we were kind of like, she's like 7 winning by 7 shots is a crazy thing. So anyway, he's like, I'm actually all right at this thing. Starts playing, and within a year he was scratch. Now he's come back, I think, a little bit since then, but I've never seen someone take to a sport like he did to golf. But yeah, the Burns, Harry and Ross are also very handy. There's a lot of decent golfers.
And post retirement, there's no injury issues. You can go back and play, and there's been no long term. You've no excuses when you're playing golf now, do you?
No, I'm still using the children as an excuse, but that one's But I wasn't good before I had them. I wasn't good before I had the injury, so I've plenty of excuses in the back pocket. But they're wearing thin of my friends anyway.
Jeez, when you're listing the names of Leinster players that are decent golfers, I'd love to see a Leinster versus Munster charity golfing event at some point. I mean, people would pay to see the likes of that, but you think they're competitive on the rugby pitch. I'd imagine on the golf course it wouldn't calm down that much.
Sure, we could sort that out.
Yeah, exactly. I think we get that going.
Right, if any charities out there want us to do that on their behalf, we'd be more than happy to. Well, let's move on to some rugby ones, okay? So the first one we have here is Jacob Stockdale's chip and chase against the All Blacks in the Aviva. Tell us about this. Why did you pick this? What year is this? 2018, it says there, 17th of November.
Yeah, I just think... I'm sure most people have seen the still shot from above of Aaron Smith hanging out of his legs as he's kind of dotting the ball over the line. I think it was just, for me, a real turning point. Obviously, we'd beaten them in Chicago, and that was kind of a massive point in Irish rugby history. The biggest probably turning point in Irish rugby history, but I wasn't there for that one, so I couldn't have that one in there. I was a whisker away actually. I got pulled in the training session before we went to get on the plane. I was going to be a travelling reserve, and Conor Murray had a tight calf, so they brought Luke McGrath instead. So I missed that one. Didn't get to witness that one. So this is my next best, beating them at home. But I was just, for me, the skill level of Jacob Stockdale's, he's probably the best chip and chaser I've ever seen in my time anyway. His ability to do it and really gather the ball. I'd love to know the stats on it. I genuinely can't remember him unless he gets blocked. I can't remember him not regathering it on the other side of the defence. I think they did a 5-man line out. I've seen other teams run the play since, but what they were targeting was the New Zealand backfield and how quickly they kind of left the where the line outside was. Aaron Smith was kind of covering in behind in the chip space. So it was thrown to Sexton. He does a switch with Bundy, who throws a phenomenal pass to Stockdale on the run. And he's left with Brodie Retallick in front of him with Sam Whitelock. So a tough enough chip to get it over those two tall fellas, but does a great job. Always seems to get the bounce, and that's a testament to his strike and how much he must practice that action. And anyway, sits up for him, he tears on and he takes it to the house. And I think it was 9-6 at that time, and you know, jitters, everything. It was 47 minutes into the game. That's when you kind of get a bit of separation. The belief starts to build. You're at home, and you're on to win at home on Irish soil against the All Blacks.
2018 Jacob Stockdale was just something else, James, wasn't he? Like that, the levels he reached were iconic.
Unbelievable. And like, he had so many huge moments. I think in over probably like a 4-year period, he was one of the first names on the team sheet, and that moment anyway will live with me forever. I think if you were to give me a moment from Chicago, which I wasn't there for, it would be the Henshaw try with the scrum play. I think Zebo does an unbelievable chase on a kick, leads to, like, it was a scrum. I think they maybe force a knock on off the scrum. Jamie Heaslip kind of runs sideways, and you're thinking, what's he doing here? And he does a switch with Henshaw, who does unbelievable to finish it from there, and he dots it down over his head. And that was kind of the moment we knew we were going to win and have that moment. So we've had a lot of amazing times with Irish rugby recently, and it's just great to appreciate it and take them all in. And as I said, I wasn't there for that one, but I was there for the Stockdale one, and that one kind of lived with me of like, you know, we can actually compete on the world stage, and we are good enough to do this.
You talk about the likes of Rory McIlroy down the, you know, 3 holes to play, you know, hitting a 253-yard drive, but similarly Jacob Stockdale with half an hour left in a game against the All Blacks with so much at stake. I think the game finished at 16-9 in Ireland's favour, according to the graphic we had on screen there. So the game's in the melting pot, and to even conjure up an idea to do a chip and chase, never mind execute it at that point of a game, is something else. So he tried chipping earlier in the game as well and got blocked down. So having the confidence to back himself again, like that would have been a set play where they would have known that the space would have been on in the backfield if everyone did their job. And it's about executing it. Like, as he said, you're all in. It's either it works. Like Brodie Retallick could easily catch that and run the length of the field. He's a freak athlete. So it was incredible show of confidence, ability, and just setting that like tone and getting the momentum going for Ireland as a nation, for our rugby side, and like what crack, you know, the lift it gave everyone. That's like the V was absolutely hopping after that moment, because it's as I said a little bit earlier, it's actually that we can actually do this, you know, we can back it up, and we can beat the All Blacks who for so long were this unbeatable force.
Stockdale was 21 or 22 then. He's still only 27, so there's still plenty of time for him to get back to that form. Is it possible that the injuries are past him now, and that he can actually begin to come back to that level of athleticism and bravery?
100%. I think he's so many attributes, and like sports, it's funny, it can be the best thing in the world and it can be the worst thing in the world, and you know, injuries are just a part and parcel of having a pro career, and it's how you navigate through the highs and the lows, and having the right people around you and setting yourself up for success. And listen, he was one of the best wingers in the world. He's for that period, one of the best Irish wingers of all time. Of course he can. He's done it. So like, of course he can do it again. It's just finding that spark inside himself and getting his confidence going again, and it's momentum from there on. And he's such an asset to have in a team. Even never mind his attacking side of things, but just his kicking alone, he's an absolute cannon of a boot, which is in the modern day, it's very, very important to be able to exit well against big teams and get down its territory game.
Did you ever have the audacity to try a chip and chase, James, in your story career?
Not quite a chip and chase. I had a very sad, almost very good kick against Cardiff. Come over the back of the line now. I think they were on our 10, maybe. I'm going to say our 22, but it was actually the 10. And ball comes over the top. I catch it and I boot it. Now, 50-22s didn't exist back then, but I'm running anyway after it, and it looks like it's going to dribble out, but it doesn't. And the winger, his name escaped me, Welsh winger. Anyway, I'm thinking he's not going to cut. He's not going to go down the touchline side here. There's only about a half meter of space. He's going to try to go open. So I'm standing waiting for him to go open. Anyway, he beats me up the touchline side. So from going from like being able to get him out after doing my only ever kick, pretty much in their 22, he then kicks it a banana kick from his 22, and it rolls out our 5 meter line. And so I now have a defensive throw from the 5. I'm just like, for God's sake, like what a clanger! Almost unbelievable, and then the biggest clanger ever.
Life comes at you fast.
So. Yeah, it does. So that was my one of my only kicks, and I don't think I won't get a chance, but I never was bold enough to do it again after that.
And I'm sure nobody ever brought it up either. They're good like that in change rooms.
Yeah, no, that one's forgotten very quickly. Yeah. So and will be forgotten forever.
We actually have one of your games. You played in the first game at the new Aviva when they reopened Lansdowne Road. This was one of those fixtures where it was a combined Leinster-Ulster team versus Connacht Munster. Slightly unevenly matched sides, it has to be said.
In reflection, yes, but at the time, I don't know, who picked who'd go with who, but at the time, we thought we were going in for a war, and it didn't turn out that way. We ended up winning by 80-something points, but yeah, unbelievable to be part of the first kind of, the new Lansdowne Road. And I think a few names have kind of kicked on from then to have good pro careers as well. And then one for the pub quiz is Craig Gilroy scoring the first ever try in the new Aviva Stadium. Paddy Jackson kicked a crossfield kick to him, and he finished it well. And yeah, Craig he also is probably another one for a pub quiz. Probably the only player to come off the bench and score a hat-trick. He did that against Italy in the Six Nations, and never played for their country again. He was an unbelievable finisher in his time as well, and an incredible player to play with. But yeah, for the pub quiz, he's the first ever player to score in the Aviva Stadium. So I have a butterfly here who's making friends with me.
There you go. It's all right. I thought you were in your stomach thinking about it, but no, it's an actual real butterfly. So this is the official opening of the stadium, and they wanted to make sure that there was a game played before the national side played. I think that was part of it. I'm just looking through the team. So you win 85-0. From your perspective, what was the level of excitement about being involved and being picked and being asked to play? Like, where were you at that stage of your career?
So I was still playing loosehead then, so I would have been very, very early on. It was an exciting time to be part of. One, it was a piece of history of the first game there, but also very unusual that you were like joining with a province. It wasn't like an Ireland camp where you've kind of all the different provinces. You're just joining with one province. You're trying to mesh everything up together and then go on from there. But it was great fun. We had a lot of guys. Ian Henderson was playing that day. I'm trying to think. There, Andy Warwick on the other side. There was loads of guys who went on to kick on to play good professional careers. But I wouldn't say they probably remember the day as fondly as I did. It was fairly. Probably the hardest part was running back to the halfway line every couple of minutes because the likes of Craig Gilroy and Andrew Boyle and a few others, Sam Coughlin-Murray were tearing it up, and it was one of those easy days to be a forward. And a few good pals of mine, Mark McGordy, I remember, had the game of his life. He went on to have a great career with UCD. But yeah, it was a special one.
I see Tig Leader's name on the opposition. He obviously is involved in getting all those Irish kids over to America to play American football as kickers. So that's another interesting career. Who tapped you on the shoulder and said, right, you're going to be a hooker now? Well, how did that happen?
That was Joe Schmidt. So I was going into my final year in the academy. And realistically, well, now in retrospect, realistically, like I didn't have the frame, but that was what he said to me. He put me into his office and he was like, do you want to play for Ireland? That was the kind of first line, and I was like, yeah, of course. And he said, well, it won't be at Loosehead. You don't have the frame, and I think you should move to hooker. So I just said, okay, I was a bit shook anyway, kind of talking to the head coach or a young fella, but he was like, I think you should move to hooker. You will have a chance at doing it there. So that was it. I started throwing that day, and within probably, I think that would have been going at the very, very start of pre-season, coming in at the end of pre-season. I played my first game against Munster in a pre-season game at hooker, and kind of went from there. Now I think I've told you before, I probably wasn't comfortable with the ball going out of play for about 3 years, probably 5 years, but it was without him I wouldn't have had a career. So he gave me my first cap also, and my first Ireland cap, so owe him a lot. He moved me position, and he gave me the opportunities. So yeah, very, very lucky to have had Joe and for him to kind of steer me in the right direction.
It's interesting that it's not surprising that Joe Schmidt had those people skills as well, because so many coaches over the years could just pick their favourites, move on with them, and use them in games. But at least he came to you and said, well, he was honest with you, I guess, and told you what you needed to do to have an international career.
Yeah, and listen, it's I'm not the only one to have done it. Like if you look at the bench and that amalgamated 15, you'll see Dave Heffernan is a sub back row for that game. So he also went through a similar transition, and has had an unbelievable career for Connacht and Ireland. So it can be done, but it just takes, I'm sure he'd say the same, it's probably a lucky one where it's practice, and you can get there. But yeah, very, very lucky to have had, like, he's now the principal in Newbridge College, Pat O'Brien. He actually moved me into the forwards. I was playing scrum half in Nace Rugby Club for the year before I went in, and he was patting me on the shoulder and he's like, listen, you can play scrum half, but it'll be for the D's, or you can play in the forwards and we'll have you in the A's. And I was like, yeah, I think I'll play in the forwards. So he was the first one to kind of start moving me forward, and then I slowly got moved further and further forward into the front row. That was kind of the next pat in the back was Derek Sherlock, another teacher of mine. He was kind of had the chat with me, been like, would you like to play junior cup in the second year? I was like, yeah, of course, I'd do anything. And he's like, you do anything? I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, you're going to be playing the front row now. So I was like, okay. So I moved from scrum half to flanker to prop within 2 years, and I haven't looked back since.
Just don't tell the parents until they actually show up to watch the match. Like, I didn't see it. I was in the front row. That was a secret.
Yeah.
In a way, right? I know you talk about being uncomfortable with the ball going out, but having the loose head skills and understanding about the possibility of carrying, presumably that was something that separated you from some of the competition that you would have had as hookers, who had been hookers their whole time, focusing just on technique. I know now, obviously, you look at Dan Sheehan, he's a bit of a freak, but Keller also a bit of a freak. But you would have had the dynamism of a loose head to bring. I guess I'm trying to, in the positive side. The negative is obviously the lack of throwing experience, but on the positive is that, like, there is more dynamism inbuilt in your game.
So I'd say one of the main things that helped was, as a loose head, you go into every game and you're almost having an individual battle with the tight head. It's you versus them. Now, the whole scrum is obviously part of it as well, but it's a lot more individual than say hooker, where it's more of a collective. You're more the glue in the middle of the scrum, and you're trying to set everyone up so we can all attack, versus your loose head versus their tight head and your tight head versus their loose head is a lot more of an individual battle, and I loved that part of it. So it took me a little bit to stop being selfish in the middle at hooker, but once I kind of realised that I'd kind of set everyone else first, and then I could be part of the attack, and it made then, you know, some of my favourite parts of and memories I have from playing the game were big scrum penalties. You know, like I said before that I loved scrummaging with Cian Healy at tight head as well. I loved my loose head, but tight head, because I knew, you know, he wasn't as experienced at it, but he wanted to attack, right, no matter what. So it was kind of holding him back more than anything else. But the satisfaction out of getting a scrum penalty in a big moment, like, you just can't beat it, because especially in hooker, it's because, you know, it's group effort and there's a lot of little things that have to go right for you to do it. But I had that probably ingrained in me from playing loose head and loving that one-on-one battle against whatever tight head I was playing against, and and really getting up for it. Every time it was a scrum, you knew you were looking at your opposite tight head and you knew it was go time.
Yeah, that does sound particularly enjoyable when you put it like that. The last one we have here is James Ryan's first touch in professional rugby being a try for Ireland against USA. I think people have kind of forgotten about the fact that James Ryan is one of those few people in history who played for Ireland before he actually played his first full game for his province. This is all the way back in 2017.
Incredible. So I think Gordon Darcy did it as well. I'm not sure. Do you know if anyone else? Is there anyone else on that list now? It's a very, very, very short list, I think
Bod, I think, played for Ireland before he played for Leinster. I'm not sure. He certainly played for UCD before he played for Ireland, but I'm fairly sure. Did Brian O'Driscoll play for? I don't know. We looked that up.
I thought it was. I thought
you would know
Darcy,
better, I suspect. But go on, yeah.
No, I think it could have been Darcy. I'm not sure about O'Driscoll. But when he came into Leinster and Ireland camp, there was a feeling about him that this guy was something special. And you know, I remember chatting to a few of the kind of the backroom staff about him. You know, because he came in and he was a kid. You know, he was this big, huge frame, but he was just a scrawny kid. And he was so raw, but his attention to detail straight away and his understanding of the game and just his just had something about him. There was just an aura of something special, but like he was very unassuming. There was no, like, he wasn't strolling around camp or strolling around Leinster. He was like a student of the game straight away, and he was very inquisitive. You know, to people that he looked up to, he'd always be kind of trying to get little insights and little things of that he could learn. But absolutely incredible to think that someone like, was he 19, 20 maybe when he did, but like for your first touch ever in professional rugby to be a try, it's just kind of set the tone for where he's gone since then. And I think he's probably the most complete second row in the world right now, and I say that from looking at his statistics. You know, like his tackle statistics are for the last season were about 97%. Just to give you like a benchmark, like anything above 91% in most things will be world class. You know, if your throwing was 91%, if your carry of getting over the game line was 91%, usually that's kind of 91% is kind of the baseline for if you want to be world class at anything. If you can get over 91, he's got about 97 with his tackle. His ruck it'd be mid kind of 93, 94. His ruck effectiveness he's probably one of the most dominant tacklers out there in the last kind of year or so. His line out would be in and around the mid 90s, around 94, 95. He's just, and how many balls does he steal in big moments? I think that's probably something we've taken for granted with him, because he just keeps doing it, is that he probably comes up with definitely one, if not two, big moments a game where we're back against the wall and he'll come up with a huge line-out steal or line-out disruption. And I think having himself and Peter O'Mahony in our line-out defence is just something that makes puts a lot of pressure on opposition hookers and callers, because unless you get your drill spot on, you get it in the right area, they're going to get a hand to it, and then your attacking opportunity is going to be gone.
Yeah, I think most Leinster fans would say it's fair to say that we wouldn't have lost the final if he'd stayed on for the whole game, but not to open old wounds here.
Oh, listen, yeah, and the sad thing is we'll never know, but he was having an absolute stormer as well. He was probably the best player on the pitch. I'm not even just saying that because he left. He like his last moment is him smashing Will Skelton. He usually takes about 2 or 3 people to stop him, and James he'd smashed him a couple of times already in the game, and he'd put in a few dominant hits on other guys, but he's in the midst of putting in a huge shot on him and catches a stray knee, unfortunately, and that's his game over.
On the grief curve, I've decided that them losing is going to drive them on to great things at the Rugby World Cup, and Leinster have just taken one for the greater good.
Yeah, exactly. You got to spin on these things into a positive, and you got to bottle up that grief and use it for good, and that's all you can do. Unfortunately, when you lose, especially in a final, you have to just find a way to use it as fuel. But back to James, I think we're so lucky now to have like a few like generationally good second rows one, but just players in general, and what a time to be an Irish supporter coming into this World Cup. You have the option of you could have like Byrne and himself in there. You've Henderson, who I think people forget about him because he's probably had a bit of an injury run. He's been one of Ireland's stalwarts for the last maybe 8 years. So unbelievable player. He's the kind of guy. He gets through a ridiculous amount of work, and you don't really notice it until you watch like the video back and you look at his stats. He's unbelievable. Another man to come up with a big moment. And yeah, like we're lucky to have this sort of strength and depth going into a World Cup.
So we've had it checked. I think Gordon Darcy turned down the opportunity to play for Ireland to do his leaving cert in 1998, which would have meant he was capped beforehand. He didn't make his senior bow for Ireland till a little bit later, and then played for Leinster the next year. But O'Driscoll did play for Ireland before he played for Leinster in 2000. Sorry, not in 2000. Okay. By that stage, it was 98. I think was his
99.
99. Yeah. 99. He made his debut. Yeah. So illustrious company.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Very good. Yeah. That is, it's nothing short of ridiculous. But like you look at the 3 lads that you just named there, and yeah, they're generationally good players, and there's no denying why they got the opportunity when they did, because you just got to get these sorts of guys in and get a feel of international rugby, get them comfortable in the environment, and start building them as leaders. But yeah, fair play to. Well, it wouldn't be hard to see the talent and have the foresight to bring them in, but fair play to the coaches that did get them in early, and we all got to reap the rewards of having them part of the Irish and Leinster setups.
James, great stuff. That was a brilliant version of You Had to Be There. Thanks a million. We'll let you get back to the sunshine. Cheers.
Good man. Thanks a million, lads. I'll chat to you soon.
Cheers, James.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Yeah, you can get all of the You Had to Be There's in the OTB Daily feed. It is 9:35 OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. On tomorrow's show, all the reaction to Ireland's game with Zambia tonight, preview the weekend's football and hurling, plenty of rugby and more besides. Right now, the best of Vincent Hogan's chat with Joe on last night's show. Have a terrific Thursday.
I think the most harrowing story from the orphanages is when he talks about his mum bringing him out to visit someone, ostensibly to visit someone, and then she disappears and he finds he's back in the orphanages again. I think everyone who reads that is just, oh my God.
Yeah.
How does that child cope? How does she cope walking back out of that orphanage? To be honest, I've no idea. But Paul is so impassive, and he can tell you about the most horrible stuff, and he's just kind of shrugging his shoulders. Because I remember I think the opening chapter in that book is about going to Manchester Crown Court in the back of a police van. And he just happened to tell me this in passing in the front room of the house as we were finishing up the book. And I'm thinking, oh my God. But it to Paul was just another part of the chaos. Chaos that he just accepted as part of his issues. And but do you know what? My kids had no sense of the scale of star he was. And my youngest lad, he's 26 now, the Paul McGrath book would have been beside his bed for 10 years and he would never have opened it. And then one out of the blue one day, he came down, he said to me, did Paul play for Manchester United? I was saying, wow. Because to my kids, Paul was just this big, warm, friendly man who came in the door. He's a hugger, he's very tactile. They just loved him from the get-go, but he was just someone that Dad was doing a book with. They had no sense of the scale of who he is. But the thing I love, Joe, is that Paul is very proud of the book. And Paul still tells me, we did a thing there a few months ago for The Independent. He still gets people talking to him about the book and the openness and the honesty of the book. And that's what I'm proud about. You know, we got the awards and whatever, but our friendship is still there, and he's really proud that he did that book and that he didn't back away from anything. And you know what? He still has his moments, but he's a happy man. He's a happy grandfather. He's a happy father. His kids love him. His grandchildren love him, and I don't think there's a more loved Irish sports star. I really don't.
He's up there. So if the weight of not getting anything wrong between Limerick and Cork weighs on you, the weight of not screwing that book up must have weighed on you. Was it a difficult one to write in that respect?
Oh, that was extraordinary. That was just extraordinary because I had issues with Random House, who published it, these London publishers who I refused to sign the contract because they wanted me to absorb all potential legal issues with the book, and I said not a chance. And actually I had the book practically written and I hadn't submitted a single chapter, and I thought I was going mad. I really thought I was going mad because I was unearthing all of this stuff. I'd taken 4 months unpaid leave of absence from The Independent. I thought I was unearthing this stuff, and then you just start to feel, what am I doing here? What have I done? And I got a very hostile email one time. I remember I was sick in bed one morning, and I got a very hostile email from Random House, who I think they probably suspected I had done nothing because I hadn't submitted anything. And I sent a really angry email back about, I'm not signing that contract and I will not submit anything until you give me a contract. And so I sent them one chapter, and I got the contract the following day.
Okay.
So, and then it took off, and within 6 months of the book coming out, they came over, they sent a group over to meet Paul and me in Dublin to write a second book. And Paul was keen to go, and I said, no, not a chance. It drove me to the point of insanity, and I'm really proud of it. It's probably the thing that makes me most proud of my career.
Okay.
But by God, it emptied me. It really emptied me physically and emotionally. And again, you go back to your partner, my wife. If I didn't have the support I had at home, that book would never have seen the light of day. Not a chance.
Do you feel like you had a peak decade as a journalist?
Oh God, that sounds very kind of full of myself to say something.
I just mean it in terms of the ebb and flow, and there is a creative aspect to it, and maybe it's your energy levels or how good you're feeling or otherwise, or maybe it's experience, I don't know, but do you feel like, God, I was really knocking out great stuff then for whatever reason?
I think I would go back to the early 90s, 93, where The Independent, and I will always be so grateful to The Independent for what the exposure they gave me and the trust they put in me. But I remember around 93, 94, I was basically told, look, just cover anything you want.
Okay.
Just do whatever you want. And one of the things I did was, Mike Tyson came out of jail after 3 years for his rape sentence. And his first fight was against an Irish American called Pete McNeely. I'm thinking, an Irish American is going to fight Tyson. I've got to get an interview with this guy. And I tracked down his trainer and manager, who was a guy called Vinny Vecchione, who's the American media described him as a small-time mobster. And one of the first things he did, Vinny said, yeah, come over, we'll give you a week and we'll get just talking to Pete. And first thing he showed me was he had 2 bullet wounds, and it was just this most surreal week I spent in Boston. But I remember every day I'd say to Vinny, can I talk to Pete today? And he said, no, he's like a bear today, just leave him alone, And I kind of started to twig that McNeely was doing all the talk shows, Letterman and all of these things, and he had this phrase that he used about Tyson, I'm going to wrap him in a cocoon of horror and all of this. And he was playing to the galleries. I kind of just twigged, I think he's terrified. And I remember my last day in the gym, I said, Vinny, any chance I can get Pete? And he said, go try yourself, I'm not asking him. And I asked McNeely, and he came out and he sat in the fire exit with me. And I got this interview with him where I kind of said to him, I'm watching you for a week, and do you feel you're being treated like a piece of meat? And it was a question that seemed to engage him on a human level rather than this poster for the guy who was going to go after Tyson. And he was an intelligent guy, a really college-educated, intelligent guy who was terrified. And I just knew he was terrified. And of course, that fight lasted something like 96 seconds, where he just went charging after Tyson, and he was dropped 3 times. And Vecchione climbed into the ring to stop the fight. Now, normally you just throw the towel in, but this guy that the American media had kind of tagged as a small-time mobster, he kind of forgot where he was, and he just stopped, and he just charged in. And of course, the first thing that happens when you do that is you're disqualified. Your fighter is disqualified. So they were due to get $750,000 for the fight. So in climbing into the ring, they weren't going to get their purse. But he had the fundamental decency to care about the fighter. And it's like a penny dropped over the next few months, because Ring Magazine made Vecchione their boxing manager of the year subsequently, because they did get the purse. The purse was released. And I just thought, if ever there's a lesson in not judging a book by the cover, A, in McNeely, who was just going around as a braggart but was terrified, and B, in this so-called small-time mobster who's dead since, who wore this kind of scally cap and played up to the thing of being a kind of a rogue. But in that moment, his instinct was to jump in the ring and stop the fight. Yeah. And he was going to lose the biggest payday of their lives. But that was his instinct. It was an instinct of decency.
Yes. So that's a great thing in '93 to be told, go where your nose takes you. And '06, you got the McGrath highlighting, I certainly remember the last 15 years very well, and it seems like you're having a great time and doing great stuff. I listened out of interest again last night to the Tainted podcast about Michelle Smith de Bruin and listen to your contributions on it, and that sounds like a bloody miserable time, certainly in memory. And you say, I don't feel great reading my pieces from back then, and those couple of years were obviously very stressful. Did they dominate that period, or were you still enjoying covering GAA and covering other sports? What are your reflections on that period now? Because I know it was so divisive between journalists.
It was incredibly divisive. The only other thing comparable was probably Saipan, where journalists took sides. It was Mick or Roy. The Michelle one was, to me, it encapsulated how uneasy I always felt going to an Olympics. Because, and I used to joke with Billy Walsh about this, that every 4 years he'd see my number coming up on his phone, and he'd say, oh geez, Olympic year. Yeah. He's suddenly interested. Yeah. And I used to laugh about that, because it was so true. GA was my main beat. And then every 4 years you're just catapulted into this environment. And Atlanta would have been my first Olympics, and I was completely intimidated. And I remember the day before I flew out, I was at the Munster hurling final replay in Cork, came home, packed a bag at 2 a.m. and went to Atlanta. And the journalists who were scrutinising Michelle Smith had put so much research and energy into it, and now I'm just catapulted into this environment. And I remember having lunch with David Walsh in the main press centre, and with David talking about it, and I'm kind of just sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to do here? And basically what I did was I just took the idea that innocent unless proved guilty, and I suppose it was the editorial line that the Irish Independent took as well. And I remember, I think back to that time. I used to ring my parents, and they'd all be going to friends' houses, or their friends would be coming to them to watch the swimming, and it was just happy time.
Mania.
Yeah, and I do look back. I'm not very proud of the fact that I just went with the populist thing and went with the flow, and I do see now in hindsight how isolated some of the journalists who were going after would have felt, because they were going against the national mood, and that hostility would have broken out into relationships in the press box, and would have been a fairly tense place to be sometimes, and little comments paid to one another, and I would never be an aggressor in that situation, but the typical male thing, if someone had a pop at me, I'd have double the pop back, and just became a little bit childish and petty. And I eventually did write that column. I don't know what year it was it 20 years later? And I just told the truth basically about what I felt, and did I believe in her? No, I didn't really. But I just was at my first Olympics, and I just basically was going to go with the flow. And I've always found, as a writer, the Olympics incredibly challenging and intimidating.
It's funny, on the podcast, Paul Howard, who was one of those who raised questions and flew to Holland and brought up issues with Eric de Bruyn's past, he did, to be fair, without exonerating people who kind of were waving the tricolour, to use that phrase, he did make the fair enough observation. He was very grateful he wasn't on the daily beat and having to do the equivalent of the match report, because that's a harder thing. It's like you have to give an account of what happened, and it's a great achievement, and yet then there are these obviously very significant questions to be answered, and get the tone of that perfectly right day in, day out, as opposed to having maybe 6 days to find the right phraseology. So I thought that was an interesting observation, which maybe goes to your predicament of covering the Olympics. It's very hard on the whole to know how to frame a lot of what you're seeing.
Absolutely. I mean, particularly on the daily beat, as you say, because it's just coming at you in a frenzied kind of environment almost. Like, one of the things that I've often thought, when I was in Beijing at midnight one night, I got a phone call that Dennis Lynch's horse had tested positive in Hong Kong. We need a 2-page spread. Or in Rio at 7 o'clock in the morning, Pat Hickey has been arrested. Can you make a few calls? Now, I don't speak Portuguese, so who do you ring? I've always gone to an Olympics with a knot in my stomach, for that very reason, that you just never know what's going to be thrown at you. And in that situation with Michelle, obviously it had been flagged in advance that people doubted the improvement and all of that. But it was, what are you going to do? She wins her first gold medal. Are you going to cast aspersions on it when you haven't done this research? You don't really know what the others are talking about here. So no, it was just I do remember when it was it 2 years later, when there was the urine in the sample, and or the whiskey in the urine sample, and Vinnie Doyle, who was this great, one of the greatest newspaper editors probably in Ireland ever, and he rang me and he said, we waved the flag for Michelle 2 years ago now. I want you to write the editorial. And that was one of the most challenging things I ever faced. And when I think back on the editorial I wrote, because it's the only editorial I've ever written for the Independent in my life, it was just being clever with words. That's what it was, because rather than I couldn't say we were wrong. When I look back on it, it was just being clever with words, and it was a hugely challenging thing to do. But I kind of had to do it, and did I say mea culpa? No, I didn't. That took about 18 years later, But look, I don't feel particularly guilty about it either. It's not something that
You're not haunted by it either.
No, and I wasn't brazenly, doing something that I didn't believe in. I was kind of taking the easy option.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly proud of that at the time, but I'm not haunted by it. No.
Yeah. What about Saipan, which you mentioned?
Well, I wasn't in Saipan, but I was in Izumo. So I would have been very much on Mick McCarthy's side.
Did you have a good relationship with Mick?
Yeah, I think most of us did at the time, yeah.
And what was your relationship with Roy, aside from
Well, no one had a relationship with Roy, really. Okay. Roy, as I say, that time in Macedonia, would do an interview with you if it suited him.
Yeah.
But no, you never had a relationship with Roy. I would have felt, at the time that Roy, anecdotally what I was hearing, that Roy was very difficult to deal with out there. There had been even stories about before they left, and that it was really a situation where I think there was 23 people in the squad, and there was a lot of focus on one person, and you're going to the World Cup. So this all kicked off as I was flying to Izumo, and that first week in Izumo, it wasn't about the World Cup, it was about, is Roy coming back? And I'll always remember the Tommy Gorman interview particularly, because these were the days of very basic communications and very basic computers, and I've always been a Luddite when it comes to technology, but the smartest guys in the room were always the photographers. They were technologically savvy, and they would have wired up a thing in a bedroom so that we could watch the Tommy Gorman interview, which was, I think, about 2 a.m. over there. And we couldn't file anything until we knew what Roy was going to say to Tommy. And I always have this vivid memory of 20 of us, and the bedrooms in Japan are not very big. And there's 20 of us waiting for this moment where he's saying he's going back. And then he doesn't say it. And then we have to go across to the team hotel, where we're waiting to get mixed reaction to him not saying if he's coming back. It was a bizarre time.
I presume Mick wasn't there at 2 a.m. to give you the answer.
No, Mick was certainly not there. We were kind of waiting. I remember Mick Byrne, the physio, and he waving a white towel out, would you ever go away and give us a break? But journalists would have had screaming matches, socially, you do your stuff and you go for a beer, and there would be screaming matches, because that was Mick's side, that was Roy's side, and it was really embittered, and just again a really intense time. I would have ghostwritten Niall Quinn at the time, and Niall was going through such turmoil, and it became a situation for me where my own pieces were relatively short, because Niall's situation in the whole conflict was so fundamental that I ended up, Niall's columns were 3,000 words at times, where he's describing what's going on during the night, and he was compelling about it, and you look back on it, and really it was just an emotional roller coaster until they got to the time where they played the Cameroon match, and Matt Holland got the equaliser, and then it's about the World Cup. And Roy's at home walking Trigger or Triggs or whatever.
And would you still be of a similar mindset?
I would. Do you know what? I've often been accused, and again, social media is so funny, because I've written so many pieces about Roy Keane over the years, and I've always said, my biggest problem in journalism was that if Roy sneezed, I'd get a phone call to do a 2-page spread on Roy. And
I know the feeling.
I've often been accused on social media, my God, you're so obsessed with Roy Keane.
Right.
I honestly, Joe, would not have written a single line about Roy Keane in 20 years if I could have got away with it. I don't find Roy fascinating as a pundit. I find Roy kind of just playing to almost to satire, you know, that he's just endlessly cross and endlessly intolerant of people around him, but he's doing exactly what he said he wouldn't do. But I still would say that when he wants to be, he's very intelligent.
Funny, I would have thought any time you've written about Roy Keane, it's because you're fascinated by him, as opposed to you got a phone call.
No.
I thought in '93 they said you could do what you want.
No, well, that changed. Obviously, I didn't do it well enough.
Oh, that's interesting. And there's loads of messages coming in. A lot of people are saying they're going to desperately miss you, and they hope you're not away for too long, which you'll be glad to hear. One event you could cover one more time, asked Peter.
Augusta. I was.
I did, by the way, as you were like laughing about the postman saying, "Sure, you don't work," and us talking about the stresses, and then you said, "Well, yes, it was." I weighed up my options when I was in Augusta. I did think, well, maybe the postman has a point here, as you.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was in Augusta in '93, where they sent me just out of the blue, the year Langer won, and I came out of the hat and I played Augusta National, and it was just ridiculous because I didn't play golf at the time, and then I went back in 2018, and I play golf now, and I just, of all the places you go to be out on that golf course, Joe, it's just magical. It's just an absolutely magical place to be. And you know, I was there obviously when Tiger won, and actually you sent me a lovely message after that. But I remember the one big problem, of course, as a journalist, is the 5 hours, and you're under pressure with the 5 hour thing. But when Tiger won, they'd brought play forward by 2 hours because of a storm that was coming in.
Oh, I remember I was working here and I was not pleased with that situation.
And suddenly you're thinking, because I never thought he was going to win.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, Molinari puts the ball in the 12th in water, and it's like, Jesus. But I remember getting a panic then. I thought Patrick Cantlay was going to win, and I started Googling Cantlay. Who is Patrick Cantlay?
Yeah.
That was a nightmare scenario for me.
You were being asked for a shorter word count for the Cantlay win.
Oh, I mean, you just have your shape and that's it. Like, and suddenly Tiger wins. And, you know, I remember being in here with Marie Crowe, and as a woman, I can see why you would have very mixed feelings about Tiger Woods on any level.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I understand that, but it was the best story in sport. It was just, to me, it was the story you wanted to write. And you know, to have the extra 2 hours rather than be right up on the deadline. So that was just such a pleasurable thing as a journalist to be there, and to have the luxury of time to do it. But of all the places I've gone, and I think the one thing that years and years of being in press boxes and that, you lose your wow factor. You lose that sense of, God, it's great to be here. You know, sometimes I might get it at a hurling final or a Munster final or something like that, but by and large, it's work, it's deadlines. But you just get that thing in Augusta National where just being out on that golf course and, you know, just feeling, God, it's so lucky to be alive, to be out here and seeing these golf holes where my kids, for example, would have no interest in golf, but Masters Sunday, the back nine, they know the holes. They know the holes. They just switch to a hole. Oh, that's the 12th. You know, and it's, I think because it's the same course every year and because it's stunningly picturesque and...
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.